The main character in this story is called Kuju-kei. Having traveled, he found himself here. The hero lifted himself up from the ground and tried to realize where he was. At that moment, behind his back, the young man heard a female voice. "Welcome, hero." The girl whose voice Kuju heard was already waiting for the hero. And then Kuju met her, a gorgeous maiden who first asked him to kill her. 3 years have passed since then. And now, Kuju is already approaching the Academy of Eugracius. Walking leisurely, Kuju wondered if he looked strange. The young man noticed that there were plenty of newcomers around, and he didn't want to stand out. At that moment, a cat's head peeked out of the guy's bag and asked Kuju to look at the newcomers' characters. Kuju asked his cat named Felis not to climb out, because when Felis climbed out, the young man was furious. Felis, on the other hand, asked Kuju not to behave like that, because it was very boring in her bag. Kuju still insisted that Felis climb back inside, because people might think he was crazy. Felis, on the other hand, sighed unhappily. She didn't like the fact that Kuju was constantly thinking about what others would think of him. The cat even considered that Kuju might be the kind of introvert. But Kuju thought that this was not helpful. He asked Felis if it had ever occurred to her that he had only interacted with her for a long time. Felis thought that Kuju was obviously exaggerating, as they had only been in contact for 3 years. But Kuju clarified that the 3 years they have been communicating only in the real world. The young man then asked Felis to just sit quietly, but Felis still lazily peeked out of the bag, justifying it by saying that she was a cat. At this moment, Kuju caught the attention of a female student as he tried to put Felis back into the bag. The female student, seeing a cat in Kuju's hands, shouted loudly, "Kodak." She then ran up to Kuju and began to examine Felis. The girl was talking about how cute and beautiful the young man's kitty cat was. This is when Kuju realized they were quickly caught. Then the guy took a closer look at the girl that approached him and asked if she was also one of the so-called returnees, to which she firmly replied, "Yes." As it turns out, this beauty's name is Imari Kamari. She is a newcomer. When the girl introduced herself, she decided to show Kuju her invitation, so she started digging in her pocket to find it. But Imari did not find the invitation in her pocket, so she panicked and started turning her whole self upside down. Kuju, on the other hand, asked Imari to calm down. He was surprised at how restless this girl was. Imari, on the other hand, finally found the invitation and handed it to Kuju. Kuju took the invitation in his hand and realized that Imari had the same invitation from the academy, just as he thought. At that moment, the academy clock struck 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which meant that the entrance ceremony was about to begin. Because of that, Imari quickly suggested that Kuju should rather go to it. Felis at this time was already sitting on the ground. She caught Kuju's attention when she laughed and said how interesting Imari was. Kuju, however, didn't understand at all what Felis was laughing at. In the end, the young man decided that it was all unimportant and just asked Felis to be on the lookout. Kuju claimed that it would be the end of them if someone found out who Felis was. Felis, however, knew it herself. A short time later, Kuju was already sitting in the auditorium for the 13th commencement ceremony of Eugracia Academy. Near the microphone on the stage, the Prime Minister was speaking. He began by saying that the school was an educational institution created by the goddess and the Japanese state. So to speak, a bridge between the people and the goddess. Kuju, however, noticed at this time that the Prime Minister was sitting off to the side. He told this to Felis, who was sitting in the bag at the hero's feet. Felis herself noticed this minister of something. At this moment, suddenly, Kuju felt that this hero academy was a completely different level. Felis asked Kuju not to act like a fool and just look around. Looking at the rest of the guys, Kuju saw how all of them were spitting on this ceremony. Some were playing on their phones, some were stretching. At this point, the Prime Minister, who was giving a speech at the microphone, said that everyone here was a hero who had saved many worlds and had come back. The man claimed that the government was very proud of them all. Felis, meanwhile, swept in and said that everyone here was capable of bringing kings to their knees. Felis was amused that to the heroes the government is just a stone in the road. At this point, a girl with a short haircut came on stage and first apologized to the minister. She then asked if he could finish with his speech. The girl pointed out to the minister to a room full of characters he had not heard at all. The minister realized that the girl was right and decided to finish. Then the microphone passed to the very short haircut girl. She greeted everyone and introduced herself. Kyuzua Minao. She explained that she was the executive director of the academy and could tell the kids all about the school. Minao assured that the timing of the big shots was simple and was sure that everyone present and herself had already guessed what this place was. So, Eugracia Academy would from now on serve as a quarantine for all the heroes present. This statement confused the heroes sitting in the hall, but Kyuzua continued. She spoke of how everyone here has the power to save the whole world. Feeling threatened, the heroes become an atomic bomb. A guy or girl in the very middle of puberty with such powers. Because Kyuzua assured that if something happened or one of the students ran away, everyone would be in trouble. The girl argued that as a reasonable country, they couldn't let the heroes just disperse, but they also wouldn't lock them up. Kyuzuha said that there are many gods in this school and the heroes can return to their usual life, about which is still understood. At this moment, another girl who looked like an angel was present in the hall. She was sitting on a structure suspended from the ceiling and was also listening to the ceremony. Kyuzuha, on the other hand, continued her speech. The girl was certain that some heroes would not like it in their past lives. They were saying, "I don't want to lose the strength I gained." Kyuzuha assured that the academy understood the feelings of the heroes, so she wanted to offer those present a deal. Right away, Kyuzuha explained that the deal didn't include any dangerous experiments or anything like that. She just decided to show the guys everything on the screen. Kyuzuha loves films, she really does. After a couple of minutes of waiting, nothing was happening. One impatient character complained about the delay and asked if it couldn't be done faster. Kyuzuha, on the other hand, asked the boys to be more patient. Then she snapped her fingers and immediately after the snap a terrifying roar was heard. It was demons coming out of the magic circles on the ceiling. Seeing this, Kuju was terrified, but Fellis only laughed and even rejoiced because something interesting had finally happened. Seeing the monsters, the heroes immediately began to scatter. Kuju had a plan to get everyone out of here, but some of the heroes had a different plan. They drew their weapons and ordered the demons to attack. Then began a thrilling battle between the returning heroes and the demons who had appeared out of nowhere. After a couple of minutes, it was over. Only the bloody bodies of the monsters remained on the floor. Seeing the strength of the returning heroes, Kuju was horrified. Kyuzuha came down from the stage at this time and noticed how active the newcomers were this year. Kuju then asked the girl if the academy wanted to test the newcomers in this way, to which Kyuzuha replied that she only wanted to cheer everyone up. The girl was just sure that the guys were having a lot of fun now. Kyuzuha assured that the heroes were using their power for the first time in a long time and were able to kill as much as they wanted. The girl claimed that it was just the price their school offered. She then asked if the heroes wanted to save another world. This world is just an offshoot of a larger tree. There are countless other worlds. Their main problem is the large number of monsters. Kyuzuha, on the other hand, wanted the heroes to get rid of these monsters. The girl assured that the problems of other worlds didn't concern them. Yes, perhaps the heroes thought so now, but once upon a time long ago there was a world that was destroyed by a demon king. The king was evil and didn't like other worlds, but when the goddess noticed, the king had already devoured thousands of them. The remaining worlds wanted to seal themselves. The abandoned world of the forsaken demon king. That's what they called it. Those words made all the heroes' mouths shut. Everyone was terrified. Kyuzuha, meanwhile, advised the heroes to hide their kidneys even before they grew. She assured that this was what the heroes' dispatch company was for. That was the end of the ceremony. Next on the program was a change of abilities, after which Kyuzuha began to call out the names of some of the people present. Ange Rikudo, Kiba-jin, Imari Kamari, and finally Kujuki. On hearing his name, Kuju was shocked. Kyuzuha, on the other hand, asked the people whose names she called out to follow her. The others listened to the staff's instructions. At this point, Fellis asked what was going on here anyway, to which Kuju replied that nothing was going on and they had just entered. But in fact, Kuju himself did not realize what was going on. After a while, Kyuzuha brought the group of those named to Hall B. The first thing she said was that going back was an exam. These words perplexed all the characters. One of them, however, asked what it meant. Kyuzuha laughed and decided to give the boys a clue. She rolled her hand and showed some sign on her arm. It's the emblem of salvation. Such a sign is given by the goddess to prove that the heroes have saved the world. Then Kyuzuha asked the heroes if they had this sign. The heroes were silent. Of course they did not have this mark, for they were not registered as purgers, and they had returned without defeating the demon king. These heroes fought only with themselves. In simple words, the guys present just failed. Kyuzuha, on the other hand, called the guys fallen heroes and just a bunch of losers. The girl then turned around and said that the heroes could still raise their status if they tried their best. After saying that, Kyuzuha only wished the heroes good luck not to die. At that moment, one of the heroes stopped Kyuzuha. He clearly didn't like the fact that Kyuzuha called them fallen heroes. He didn't believe it. Kyuzuha recognized that guy. His name was Takeru. The girl praised Takeru for his activity. She then suggested that the guy should channel his energy into defeating the demon king. These words infuriated Takeru. The furious hero began to approach Kyuzuha. Imari, on the other hand, tried to stop this guy by grabbing his shoulder and asking him not to fight. But Takeru only brushed Imari off with his shoulder. The girl fell to the floor. At that moment, Kuju came up to her and asked if she was alright. Takeru, on the other hand, turned to Kuju and asked if he had a problem. Kuju replied that he had no problems, but he also asked Takeru to dispense with violence. This made Takeru even more angry. He loudly ordered Kuju to shut up and keep quiet in a rag. Kuju, hearing Takeru's loud and menacing voice, immediately understood everything and shut up. He then turned to Kyuzuha again and asked if all this meant that he too was a losing hero like all the jerks behind his back. Takeru assured that the world he was in was called Stage 5 and he wasn't a cleaner. Takeru claimed that he was just caught off guard. The young man was sure that he would not concede his gray to anyone. The lad then claimed that he could destroy everyone here and asked Kyuzuha if she wanted to test it. Immediately after this question, Takeru used Hellfire magic. Upon seeing her, Kyuzuha was horrified. Kyuzuha at this time only noticed that Takeru's flame was large. The girl also asked Takeru to stop all this, but Takeru only wished Kyuzuha to burn in hell. At that moment, the magic circle that was behind Takeru's back was cut in two. Takeru turned around and saw a dark-haired girl with a sword. The girl put her blade to Takeru's neck and said that Takeru was now breaking school rules and thus losing points. As it turned out, the bold dark-haired beauty's name was Rei. Kyuzuha called out to this girl and said that it wasn't time yet and Takeru didn't have any points yet. Rei, on the other hand, put her blade away in her scabbard at the same time and remarked that Kyuzuha was too kind. Minao, on the other hand, turned to Takeru. The girl assured that these powers he showed now were to be used to save the world. Minao asked the fallen heroes not to make excuses. After all, the fact remained. They had failed. Heroes that they couldn't save the moment. After saying that, Minao began to leave the hall with Rei. At the end, the girl only asked the heroes to cheer her up tomorrow. As the door slammed shut, Kuju had a thought. So, he is on the list of those who couldn't defeat the Demon King. The loser. When Minao and Rei were already wandering down the corridor of the academy, Minao called Rei her savior, for the girl had come just in time. Rei, however, knew that Minao could defend herself and asked the girl not to put herself in danger anymore. Minao, on the other hand, assured her that Takeru wouldn't have done anything. Rei meanwhile said that she was interested in something as far as strength was concerned. The girl felt something strange when the magic circle was destroyed. As it turned out, Minao noticed it too. Takeru's technique at that time was already interrupted and the attack was weak. It was as if the gunpowder had been extracted. Rei had no idea who besides her and Minao could do that. Rei knew that Minao herself had seen everything with her own eyes, which meant that one of the newcomers had such an ability. At this moment, Minao wondered, is it possible to hide abilities that let you see other people's abilities? The girl assured that in any case, she would be happy that someone strong had come to the academy. At least this hero would be their ally. At this time, Kuju had just reached the Narcissus dormitory, room number 107. After opening the door and looking around the room, Kuju realized that the place was pretty good. But compared to the place where the heroes lived, it was nothing. In any case, Kuju was glad, because at least this place was quieter. At this moment, Phyllis was finally able to leave her bag. She jumped out of the bag with the words that the academy was interesting. Phyllis then began to stretch. She felt that Kuju was right, it was too open. Phyllis considered the possibility that Rei and Minao had noticed that Kuju had disabled Takeru's magic circle. Kuju, on the other hand, knew that he had rushed it. Phyllis jumped on Kuju's bed at this time and said that the young man still needed to learn since he was a fallen hero. Kuju, on the other hand, blamed himself for everything. He felt sorry for bringing Phyllis here. After all, for Phyllis, it was like going home to the enemy, but Kuju didn't want that. Phyllis, on the other hand, assured him that if Kuju came back, he could live peacefully. But Kuju refused to believe it. Phyllis decided to encourage Kuju. She talked about how if the academy teachers found out, it would be bad. It was scary to even imagine what death would be like. But Phyllis also felt that she shouldn't worry. She hoped that Kuju would protect him. Kuju, on the other hand, tentatively agreed with Phyllis. Phyllis at this time had already laid down. She noticed that Kuju responded like a real man, whereas before he was like a little boy. Then Kuju resentfully turned away and asked Phyllis to think as she wanted. At that moment a girl appeared behind the young man's back. It was Phyllis. Seeing her as a girl, Kuju was embarrassed. The first thing he asked was why was she naked, to which Phyllis replied that she was not yet fully recovered and was just getting used to her legs. The girl assured that she was unaccustomed to returning to her original form. Phyllis explained that she couldn't use magic and keep her form for long if she was in another form. Kuju was quiet at this time. This caused the girl to have questions, so she asked Kuju if he wanted to pet her, to which Kuju replied that he would pet the one if she was in the form of a cat. The young man then asked the naked Phyllis to cover herself with a blanket. Phyllis realized that all this was greatly embarrassing to Kuju and offered to tell him more about it as well. Kuju, on the other hand, grudgingly refused such an offer. After some time of silence, Phyllis confessed that she was overcome by strange feelings. Kuju did not know what Phyllis was talking about, so he asked what was she talking about. Phyllis, however, standing at the panoramic window, said she was grateful, for she has a life that should not be on this earth, now that life can shine with new colors. It was for this that Phyllis was grateful to Kuju, therefore she asked him not to worry about anything. After saying that, Felis turned around and asked if she was scary, the girl who had been abandoned by the demon queen. Felis said with a smile on her face that if she wanted to eat Kyuja, she would start with her head. It would be just like old times, when Felis and Kyuju first met. In time from their first meeting, Kyuju was lying in that world, in the eternal twilight. Kyuju recalled it with a smile on his face. In real time, however, 3 years had passed. But to the senses, those 3 years seemed like 30,000 years. Kyuju entered the desert world and met Felis. That day, the young man fought Felis. Let's go back 3 years. When Kyuju first met Felis, she asked him to kill her. The bewildered Kyuju, on the other hand, did not realize at all where he was or who the girl in front of him was. At this time, Felis approached Kyuju. Looking at the confused Kyuju, the girl realized that she had confused him. In addition, she realized that Kyuju didn't even know what this place was. In that case, she extended her hand to the young man to help him stand up. Kyuju started to rise to his feet, and Felis suggested that he take a walk and have a chat at the same time. In the meantime, Felis wanted Kyuju to look at this lost world around him. Finally, Kyuju asked Felis who she was. Then the girl introduced herself, Feriolas Fionashurg. Since the name was too long, the girl allowed Kyuju to just call her Felis. Then Kyuju asked Felis if she wanted to say that this place was a kind of another world. Felis liked the fact that Kyuju is a quick thinker. She replied that the guy is right and this world is different from Kyuju's world. The goddesses call this place the abandoned world. Such a name seemed rather creepy to Kyuju. Felis agreed with it herself. She explained that it was a world where everything had come to an end and only this endless wasteland remained. Then Kyuju asked why it had ended like this. Then Felis turned around and proudly declared, she is the one who destroyed this world. Humans, beasts, demons, everyone who lived here, Felis destroyed because she is the demon queen. After saying those words, Kyuju trembled. In that case, he asked why would a demon queen like Felis need someone like him? Felis, on the other hand, explained that she needed Kyuju to kill her. The girl claimed that she would like to do it herself, but unfortunately, she is limited by her roots, so she can't kill herself. The words about which roots confused Kyuja. At that moment, the what symbol on his chest glowed. The soul, the spiritual core. It could be said that all of these are the root that defines existence. Felis assured that everyone had a root. Felis's soul, on the other hand, could be considered to have been created to be a demon queen. Therefore, there are many limitations, and the inability to kill herself is one of Felis's limitations. That's why she needs Kyuju's help. At this moment, the girl snapped her fingers and the fire in front of Kyuju's chest disappeared. Then Kyuju confessed that he didn't know how to fight. Felis, on the other hand, only laughed and asked Kyuju to relax. She assured that she would personally raise the young man to a level where he could kill her. After a while, Felis led Kyuju to the very same place. But it was only a dead end for Kyuju. At that moment, Felis took out her key. Then the girl inserted the key into the keyhole in the door. After that, an explosion happened, and Felis invited Kyuju into her castle. When Felis and Kyuju went inside, immediately they saw a whole mountain of jewelry. Kyuju was shocked to see such a thing. While Kyuju was recovering from such a shock, Felis explained that they were now in the Vantasarium treasure hall. All of these treasures belonged to Felis. All the treasures from the 3,000 worlds she had destroyed were gathered here. Anything you want can be found here. And now Felis will use it all to train Kyuja until he is strong enough to kill her. To begin, Felis had Kyuja take a growth acceleration ring, an evil eye necklace, and drink an elixir. This elixir increases strength, but it just tastes disgusting like death itself. Even Felis, who can't die, almost died because of this elixir. That's when Kyuju realized Felis is too straightforward. And while the girl was paddling all the things she needed, Kyuju decided to take a walk around the treasure hall. Suddenly, the young man's attention was caught by a blade that stood out among the rest of the treasures. This sword seemed rather plain to Kyuju compared to the other treasures. Therefore, Kyuju didn't understand why this sword was here. When the guy reached for the sword to take it, Felis appeared behind him and asked Kyuju not to touch this sword. Felis told him that it wasn't just any sword, but an ancient Calamity Lavinkin ruler, a living demonic sword, a crystallized evil that devours the very soul. Felis had only used this sword 3 times. Right now, simply touching it will kill Kyuja. These words even made Kyuja swallow. Felis, on the other hand, laughed and asked the young man to relax. She assured him that in 300,000 years, the young man would be able to hold that sword. This number stunned Kyuja, but Felis explained that even time itself is dead in this world, and 1 year in the world of Kyuju is equal to about 10,000 years here. Felis asked Kyuju to be sure that she will train him to the fullest in this limbo where time doesn't matter. By the way, even if Kyuju dies, she will bring him back to life, and if he goes crazy, she will bring him to his senses, so everything will be fine. Kyuju grimaced as he realized everything, but it didn't sound good at all. After which the girl wondered about Kyuju's condition. She knew that she didn't have much time left, but she realized that Kyuju was very tired. Therefore, the girl decided to throw a party in his honor tonight, and so began Kuju's new life in another world. The young man wondered what kind of rigorous training awaited him. Kuju worried about whether he would be able to endure them. It turns out that the young man shouldn't have worried in vain, because Kuju's first task was to walk the white line without deviating from it. There was also the task of eating food with the left hand, or to hold things without using the little finger. These were slight deviations from Kuju's normal routine. Fellas assured that people actually move their bodies differently than they want to. In the first place, Kuju needs to strengthen his body to redirect 100% of his will back into his body. Fellas was going to make sure that Kuju knew how to use his body properly. After 50 years, gradually Kuju's body began to move the way he imagined it would, and gradually the young man began to do heavier exercises, such as running and stretching. After 100 years, Kuju's body was prepared, but the goal was not just to train it, but to control his body exactly as the lad imagined it. After another 100 years, once Kuju's body was trained to a certain degree, he and Fellas began to practice magic. It was extremely difficult for Kuju to develop the magical power needed to use magic. It took another 10,000 years before Kuju could properly use magic. After another 20,000 years, Kuju was finally able to fight using both magic and swordsmanship. Dai spent his days fighting demons created by Fellas, and so the training became more intense day by day. But in this desolate world, there is no entertainment. The only source of entertainment was talking to Fellas. One day after another tiring training session, Fellas joyfully called out to the tired Kuja. She asked the young man to tell her some more stories of human manga tonight. Fellas liked the Bucky that Kuju had told her about last night. Kuju agreed and decided to tell Fellas about the outstanding beasts next time. Fellas was very excited. She realized that Kuju was talking about the school full of beasts that the boy had told her about a few days ago. Fellas really wanted to hear Kuju's stories. About school, about home, about his favorite manga. Just stories of ordinary life without any drama. Even such boring stories Fellas always listened happily. She really liked one story about a black cat that Kuju had taken in at his house. Then Kuju told the girl that this cat never listened to him. She was like a queen taking care for granted. Kuju's cat was unsociable and often made a mess in the room. But even so, she was part of the precious Kuju family. Fellas ended up saying that Kuju's cat was just wonderful. The girl hoped that such a cute creature would always be by Kuju's side. At that moment, Kuju stared at Fellas. The girl noticed it and asked what's wrong. Kuju, on the other hand, admitted that he just thought of Fellas looking like his cat. The girl then asked if Kuju meant that she was like family to him, or did he mean that she was cute or something else? These words confused both Kuju and Fellas herself. Kuju, however, explained that what the girl thought was not what he meant. The young man was talking about Fellas's greatness being like his cat. Fellas, on the other hand, stated that it was very confusing. She assured that she was a demon queen and called Kuja a mere fool. After saying that, both of them just turned away from each other. Kuju thought about how it was wrong to say such strange things. At that moment, he noticed something lying in the corner of the room. Looking closer, Kuju realized that they were skeletons. The young man then looked at Fellas and remembered that she was the one who had destroyed the world. Humans, beasts, demons, everyone who lived here. Then Kuju realized that the one he saw right now in front of him looked like an ordinary girl. In that case, Kuju wondered why Fellas had destroyed these worlds. That was the question the young man asked the girl. Fellas looked at Kuju and replied, "The answer is simple. She destroyed all these worlds because she was created to do so. Fellas is the demon queen who destroys worlds." The girl realized that she looked like a glitch that accidentally appeared after doing her job. Fellas assured that by the time she reached self-awareness, everything had already been destroyed. In that case, Kuju believed that it was not Fellas's fault. Guy argued that all the blame lay with whoever had created Fellas. Then Fellas asked Kuju if he was sure she was innocent, looking at all the corpses buried in this wasteland. Suddenly, Kuju asked Fellas if she wanted to die because she wanted to atone for her sins. Fellas, however, laughed and asked if it was true that she looked so good. The girl assured that she was a demon queen and even if she achieved self-awareness, her nature was still the same. Fellas claimed that she didn't care about the pain and joy of others, but Kuju was certain that Fellas was lying. The girl realized that Kuju thought so because he was kind. The girl admitted that she herself could not tell whether she was lying or telling the truth. The only thing the girl knows for sure is that she is tired of this endless prison. Kuju remained silent. Fellas, on the other hand, sighed and then asked Kuju to rest because tomorrow would be the real combat training. Kuju could not utter a word as he looked at the departing Fellas. How long had the demon queen been alone in this wasteland? Kuju didn't know what to say to Fellas. He was sure that he had nothing to say to her. But one thing made Kuju think hard about something. If he could free Fellas from the fate of a demon queen living for destruction, maybe she could live like a normal person. The normal life that Fellas had so raved about in Kuju's stories. Kuju thought that Felis could have fun with her favorite cat, read her favorite manga and drink her favorite drink. Then Kuju wondered if he could get away with killing Felis, wondering if he could be with Felis. And then, some 30,000 years later, one day Felis came up to Kuju and said, "The time has come." Then Kuju asked Felis if they really needed to do this. Felis only smiled and Kuju invited the girl to go for a walk and talk a little. As the guys were taking a walk, Felis told Kuju about how she had not completely released her control over her root. Felis's destructive energy as a demon queen even now still binds her soul. It is temporary. Felis will no longer be able to fight for long. One day she will simply be consumed by her destructive power, and then the queen will start destroying everything again. And of course, that includes Kuja. Then Kuju asked what if he was against it. Felis laughed. She realized that Kuju was really kind. Felis assured that she would not let Kuju do that. Felis assured that there was no reason to doubt. For the sake of peace, Kuju must show the results of his training and defeat the evil demon queen. Or Kuju had developed feelings for this demon queen. Felis was already starting to guess. Then Kuju asked what if feelings had really developed. Felis was silent. Then she turned to Kuju and said that she had spent 30,000 years with him, and that time had been the happiest time for her. The girl assured that anyone would be only too happy to kill her. She used a random summoning spell and Kuju was just randomly chosen. Kuju just happened to endure Felis's training and just happened to spend his time with her. Because of that, Felis was grateful to Kuju. She was glad that he was the one who would kill her. After saying that, Kuju understood everything. He bared his blade and rushed towards Felis. And Felis showed her true nature. "Welcome Kuju, come over and kill me." When Felis asked Kuju to come over and kill her, Kuju noticed the girl's eyes turned black. That's how it is. The destructive power of the demon queen she spoke of. When Felis flew up to Kuju and grabbed her head with her tentacles, the young man realized that this was no longer the Felis he knew. When Felis lifted Kuju up, he pushed her away from him with his foot and fell to the ground again. The Felis that Kuju knew had a satisfied warm smile on her face. Now it was as if the girl was mad. She created magic circles and kept attacking Kuju again and again. Felis taught Kuju swordsmanship and combat magic, defense magic, recovery magic. Felis taught Kuju everything for the sake of him killing her. But Kuju had other plans for Felis. He wanted the girl to live, because she also gave Kuju something he never had in his life, a happy time spent with someone. All Kuju had done before was just give and give and give. To fulfill Felis's wish, Kuju kept doing whatever she told him to do. All this he did for 30,000 years. So this time, Kuju wanted Felis to listen to him for the first time. Then Felis attacked Kuju with her attack just as Kuju attacked Felis with his. The explosion was so powerful that it could safely be compared to the fall of a huge meteorite. Then Kuju stood over Felis's exhausted body, swinging his sword at her. Felis praised Kuju for a good job and asked him to finally finish her off. The girl assured that when she died, the contract that sent Kuju here would disappear and the guy would be able to return to his world. Felis then apologized to Kuju for dragging him into this. These words left the lad perplexed. He threw his sword on the ground and asked Felis why she was apologizing. The young man was annoyed that Felis was talking rubbish. Therefore, he wanted Felis to live if she was really sorry. Then Felis asked Kuju if he wanted her to continue living. The girl assured that she was the one who had taken countless lives and destroyed 3,000 worlds. Now she wondered if Kuju still wanted her to live. Kuju, on the other hand, argued that it was not her fault and there must be a way to separate them from the girl. Felis, on the other hand, assured that if a way existed, she would have done it long ago. The girl argued that it was impossible for her even with the help of Lavinkin. At that moment, Kuju realized there was still hope. He started to rise to his feet, and Felis did not understand what he was going to do. Kuju, on the other hand, decided to do everything for Felis. He assured that he would break the chains binding Felis if she was bound by her roots, and then the girl would be able to live as Felis and not as a demon queen. Kuju claimed that he was going to separate Felis's alter ego from her soul, but Felis begged Kuju to stop. She assured that the young man was not ready and even she could not do it. Felis assured that she was the destroyer of countless worlds and if Kuju failed, his soul would simply disappear. Kuju, on the other hand, with a smile on his face, reminded Felis that just now he was able to defeat her. In addition, in Kuju's world, the Demon King must give half of the world to those who cooperate with him. That is why Kuju is going to take away Felis's past, her future, her sins, half of her. After saying those words, Kuju raised his hand up and the seal appeared in a flash. "Come on, Lavinkin." At this moment, Kuju felt the sword taking away his magic and vitality. Moreover, Lavinkin appeared in all his glory and spoke to Kuju. Lavinkin assured that Kuju could not do this and it was still impossible for him. Lavinkin filled Kuju in on his words. "It's still too early. I need to level up first. Someday for sure." These were the excuses that Kuju used to give up. Lavinkin assured that this was why Kuju's life was boring, without drama. Therefore, Lavinkin asked Kuju to surrender again as usual. Kuju acknowledged the fact that he had been surrendering all his life because he had nothing to give up. Now this time, Kuju did not plan to give up. He would never give up on Felis, so Kuju sneaked through Lavinkin's powerful force. Then the young man ordered Lavinkin to obey him, and Lavinkin obeyed. Now the sword was in Kuju's hands, and Felis lay beneath the chains of her roots that bound her. For a long time Felis did quite well on her own, and now Kuju will get her out of there. With all his might, Kuju struck with his Lavinkin sword the chains in which Felis was imprisoned. Kuju only woke up when he heard a familiar voice. "My God, you are so reckless," said the voice. Kuju opened only one eye and saw a black cat in front of him. Kuju immediately realized that Felis was in front of him. But when Kuju realized that Felis had turned into a cat, he immediately jumped up. Felis, however, winked at Kuju and asked him if it was cute. The first thing Kuju asked Felis was why she looked like that, to which Felis replied that Kuju himself had done it to her. Lavinkin has shredded Felis's power into pieces. She can't even maintain her human form. The girl assured that she had lost a great deal. Her powers, her shackles, her destiny, her curse. That is why she feels so light now. Then the confused Kuju asked if he had succeeded. Felis only asked Kuju not to be conceited, for the young man was only halfway to his goal. Felis assured that she and Kuju would have disappeared into the world together if she had not helped at the end. Kuju, on the other hand, guiltily lowered his head and apologized to Felis for being so reckless. Felis, on the other hand, asked the guy not to blame himself, because anyway, thanks to what the guy did, she is here. Finally, Felis thanked Kuju and praised him for a good job. Also, the girl in the guise of a cat stated that her hands were now tied. Kuju did not understand anything and asked, "What do you mean?" Felis, on the other hand, explained that now that she was free from the root that bound her, she did not know what to do next. Kuju then suggested that Felis go with him to his world, and then Kuju can show Felis a normal life. Felis, on the other hand, laughed. This offer seemed very modest to her after Kuju told her to give half of herself. In the end, of course, Felis agreed to go with Kuju to his world. After all, she really wants to find out what happens next in the manga. In the end, Kuju returned to Japan, but with Felis. Felis, on the other hand, sitting in her boyfriend's arms in the guise of a cat, said how good it was that they were able to hitch a ride on the goddess's transfer gate and didn't have to create their own from scratch. Kuju, on the other hand, was more interested in whether Felis liked Japan. He also inquired about where Felis wanted to visit. At that moment, masked men appeared out of nowhere. They greeted Kuju and asked if the young man had returned from another world, to which Kuju replied uncertainly that he had indeed returned from another world. The young man himself wondered first who they were. One of the strangers replied that they had come from the recipient management committee. With these words, the stranger reached into his inner jacket pocket and took out a letter from there and handed it to Kuju. Kuju took the letter in his hand and even then asked, "What is it?" To which the stranger replied that it was a summons from Eugresia State Academy. To clarify the details, the stranger asked Kuju to read the letter. Kuju, however, did not understand anything and had already noticed the stranger about to leave. The stranger lastly said that Kuju had no right to ignore this summons. After these words, the strangers left just as suddenly as they had come. It was as if they had vanished into space, used a portal. Felis laughed and said that it was too early for her and Kuju to enjoy a normal life. That's how Felis and Kuju ended up at Eugrasia's Academy. Lying in his bed in the Academy dormitory, Kuju thought about how this should never have happened. The Academy is sort of a den of heroes from all over the world. Because of this, Kuju apologized to Felis, for he had said that he would show her what normal life was. Felis, on the other hand, lying next to Kuju, laughed again and said that it was alright, especially since it was even more interesting that way. After which Felis asked Kuju what he was going to do now. Kuju did not understand what Felis meant and asked about it. Felis, however, explained that with Kuju's power surpassing even her, she wanted to know what the young man was going to do here in this academy. After all, Kuju could rule the school, conquer the world, or do whatever he wanted. Kuju, on the other hand, assured me that he was not interested, and even Felis had seen the consequences of wielding so much power firsthand. Besides, Kuju knew that someone might figure out Felis if he stood out. The young man clearly didn't want that, so he decided to just live his life as quietly as possible. As far as fights go, Kuju had had enough for the rest of his life. Felis, on the other hand, explained to Kuju that power cannot be right or wrong. What matters is the purpose for which it is used. Felis assured that perhaps she had made a mistake, but not him. Therefore, Kuju should be more confident. But Kuju realized this himself. In this dark time of the day, that same angel girl was sitting on the roof of the academy and waving her legs into the abyss. She was musing and talking to herself. At today's entrance ceremony, the girl had noticed a couple of students who had demonstrated amazing strength. It really excited her. The girl wondered what the rest of the heroes would be like. The students would be looked after by this girl angel named Lala. Lala was so interested that she just couldn't wait for tomorrow. Finally, the first Kuju at Eugracious Academy ended. On the second school day, classes would finally begin. Kuju even wondered what kind of classes would be held at the hero's training facility. For Kuju, being in the company of a demon queen, it was all quite problematic. But Kuju's biggest problem right now is quite different. So, the young man was walking down the corridor of the academy and diligently reading some book. In it, Kuju was advised to make eye contact and speak clearly. At that moment, Kuju was called out by Felis and asked what he was reading. To which Kuju replied that he was reading his strategy book for school. The young man then showed the book to Felis. Felis looked at the book and asked what the heck is that. Kuju, on the other hand, assured that they needed to blend in with the crowd so that no one could find Felis. That's why Kuju needs friends. Besides, Felis is the only one Kuju has been communicating with for the past 30,000 years. Therefore, the guy needs to update his communication skills. Felis, on the other hand, grudgingly asked if Kuju wanted to say that he was bored of communicating with her. To which Kuju replied without an ounce of doubt that that was the case. Kuju claimed that in that world Felis was constantly trying to tease him, or tried to get him underage, drunk, or was testing her new magic on the young man. Felis, on the other hand, wrinkled his face and said that such a person really existed. These words made Kuju angry. The guy even contemplated punching Felis again. In the end, Kuju just asked Felis to stay in the bag and be quiet. And if that one needed anything, she would just need to say it using telepathy. In the end, Felis agreed. At this time, Kuju had already reached the right classroom, and while opening the door, he wished good morning loudly from the move. But looking inside, the guy didn't find a single soul. Then he entered the classroom and looked around. Felis at this time reminded the guy that classes started at 8 o'clock, and now it was only 7 o'clock on the clock. Thus, Kuju had simply come too early. At that moment, someone's unfamiliar voice was heard. But Lala came first. Kuju heard the voice and turned sharply towards the source of the sound. To make sense of it, the young man started creeping towards the teacher's desk. As he walked a little closer, Kuju noticed that someone was sitting at the desk. So he came closer and asked the stranger who she was. Lala, on the other hand, with a displeased face, asked Kuju why he was staring. Kuju, on the other hand, asked the girl if she was lost. This question made Lala very angry. She claimed that everyone was saying that to her just because she was tiny. Everyone was looking down on Lala and treating Lala like a child. Lala indignantly said that if she was lost, she would cry immediately. This behavior of the girl seemed strange to Kuju. It was also strange that this girl refers to herself in the third person. Finally, she introduced herself. Lala appeared to be a goddess, a very valuable creature. These words surprised Kuju. He thought it was a bad thing. After all, Kuju called Lala cool. Lala, however, thought that Kuju didn't believe her and decided to show him the power of the goddess. The girl raised her thumb up and then a small light lit up above it. Lala then tried to do something else, but ended up just spitting on the teacher's desk. Kuju, on the other hand, asked if that was all, and Lala asked the young man to let her rest. Then Kuju decided to ask Felis if Lala was really the goddess, to which Felis replied that Lala is the goddess without a doubt, though her power is relatively weak. Lala at this time claimed that it was just a fluke and she was just not feeling well today. Kuju then began to apologize to Lala. He claimed that he had never seen the goddesses before. These words puzzled Lala. At this point, Felis called Kuju an idiot, because a hero is usually called by a goddess. Therefore, it would be strange if Kuju said that he had never seen the goddess. So Kuju started to make up his mind. He assured that he had never seen a young and talented goddess like Lala. Kuju's behavior seemed suspicious to Lala. This is when Kuju realized that his plan was not working. Lala jumped off the table and asked the young man if he was hiding something. The girl claimed that she could not be fooled as she was very intelligent. Lala then pointed to Kuju's bag. The girl assured that she smelled something very suspicious from there. At that moment, Kuju realized things are bad. He mentally asked Felis to act like a cat. At that time, Lala had already started to take away Kuju's bag containing Felis. In the end, Kuju did give the bag to Lala, and the latter looked inside. All Lala saw inside was a surprised Felis in Kuju's notebooks. In order not to show off, Felis started meowing cutely and acting like a cat. Seeing the fluffy kitty, Lala floated. She liked Felis very much. The goddess began to hug Felis with all her might. She argued that Kuju should have told her earlier about hiding such a fluffy cat. Kuju, on the other hand, was just very happy that he and Felis had managed to deceive Lala. At that moment, the door to the classroom opened and a student walked in. After a while, the classroom was already filled with students. Kuju looked at the full class of his classmates and was quite surprised that they had all obediently come to school. After all, judging from the mood on the first day, Kuju thought that the students would be a little lazy. In the end, the young man thought that the characters were simply affected by the principal's speech yesterday. Lala was sitting on the window next to Kuju. Kuju, however, turned to her and asked her if she was a teacher. After all, he had been gone for a long time. Lala smiled and remarked that Kuju had a good eye, but he was wrong. The girl argued that she is far more important than a teacher. She is the warden. In that case, Kuju did not understand where the real teacher was. Finally, someone entered the classroom. It was Minao, whose appearance Kuju was clearly not thrilled about. Minao, looking at the surprised faces of the heroes, asked what was the matter and why everyone was silent. The girl didn't really like the fact that the kids couldn't greet their mentor. One of the students explained that he and the others just didn't think the instructor would be their age. Minao laughed and asked if the kids really thought a regular school teacher was coming. The girl assured that a normal adult teacher wouldn't be able to teach anything to people like them. Minao said that everyone here is a former hero and all of them have some kind of superpower, so no normal adult can take care of them. Minao also added that it bothers her that the guys think they are equal to her and the other teachers. These words made Kuja tense. Minao, on the other hand, decided to start the lesson. Since she didn't know anything about any of the students, she first asked them to show what they could do. In an instant, Minao used spatial magic and decided to give some advice from the elder. Your life. Take care of it. After a while, all the disciples were lying on the grass. Suddenly, Kuju noticed that the sky was stitched together. When the other disciples noticed this, they visibly tensed up. Phallus at this time, being in the bag next to Kuju, said that it was a new space created with magic. To think that Minao was able to create and maintain such a large space. Kuju, on the other hand, realized that it wasn't surprising that Minao said that she didn't want to be compared to her students. At that moment, behind his back, Kuju heard a maiden's cry. When Kuju and the others turned around, they saw the paws of monsters that were rapidly approaching them. Minao, on the other hand, assured them that they were her pets, and since yesterday's had been lost so easily, today she had brought the most adorable of them for the boys. Smiling, Kuju declared that this was one of Minao's most disgusting hobbies. At this time, there was already a crowd of all sorts of monsters headed towards the students, and Minao and Lala were watching the developments from the air. Minao wished the guys good luck and try not to die. This is when Kuju realized that Minao was not going to teach them all from the beginning. Phallus laughed at this time. She was amused by the fact that Minao wished the guys good luck and wished they wouldn't die. Because of that, Phallus asked Kuju to watch herself. Kuju, on the other hand, decided to stretch a bit first. He said that he would take care of it, because lately his body had become a bit sluggish. After all, it had been a long time since the last battle between Kuju and Phallus. Therefore, taking out his sword, Kuju decided that this might be a good warm-up for him. Minao, being a member of the Law Enforcement Committee, uses monsters to test the strength of the students. She has a strange idea about tests. The students have already taken on one monster each. Everyone has started fighting, and Kuju has yet to find an opponent. How, all of a sudden, a giant dragon monster appeared. Kuju immediately realized, this is not good. Kuju doesn't know what this monster is called, but after 30,000 years of fighting Ferris, he is confident that he can handle it. But there was still one problem. The thing is that Kuju and the demon queen that sits in his bag shouldn't stand out, and not standing out wouldn't be possible if Kuju were to win quickly. But Kuju also realized that if he avoided fighting too often, he would also draw attention to himself. In other words, Kuju must defeat this monster with restraint. Immediately, the monster wanted to attack Kuju using its paw. Kuju noticed it and dodged it. Then the young man used flame magic. This attack was aimed right at the monster's face, causing it to roar loudly. Unfortunately, the dragon quickly came to its senses and decided to attack Kuju with a breath of flame. Kuju only had to defend himself. He made a barrier around himself that was able to protect him from the attack. Kuju was beginning to like this fight. At this moment, Kuju caught the attention of the other disciples who had already massacred their monsters. They realized that Kuju was fighting a needle dragon, a rank S demon. Kuju was glad that the problem was fixed rather quickly. At that moment, the disciples took a closer look at the dragon. They reckoned that it was a female needle dragon. And female needle dragons are the weakest demons. In that case, the boys considered Kuju to be a weak hero. In that case, Kuju decided to fight on his fists. Without thinking long, he punched the dragon with his fist with all his might. The dragon flew a long distance away from this blow. The boys watching this recognized that Kuju was pretty tough. Kuju laughed and said that it was time to get serious, for he had fought this monster for a long time. At this point, one of the boys pointed out to the others that male echinoderms have even shorter horns. Thus, just now, Kuju will defeat the male. Then it's an S-class demon, and Kuju defeated him with just one blow. Here all the students wondered if Kuju was really a failed hero. Kuju realized that things were bad and decided to improvise. Switching on his acting skills, he grabbed his arm to show how much pain he was in. This is when the other students laughed at Kuju and realized that he only wanted to be cool. Kuju realized, school life can be hard, At that moment, all of a sudden, the neighborhood lit up with a bright light. Kuju took notice and turned around. The spirit of eternal fire. It's a werewolf pseudo-spirit. But why is it here? Kuju didn't understand. Unlike demons, it is an artificial life form created with magic. Could it be that Maou planned this? At that moment, there was an explosion, and through the bright light, a healthy 5-headed dragon appeared. All the students panicked. They thought it was some kind of final boss. At that moment, all 5 heads of the dragon opened their jaws and attacked the students with flames. The 5 fireballs merged into one large one that headed towards the heroes. The disciples started shouting to deploy defensive magic, but it was too late. Kuju still managed to do something. Eventually, there was a huge explosion, with Maou and Lala watching from above. Concerned Lala turned to Maou and asked if she should stop it. Maou, on the other hand, was just snoring at this time. She had fallen asleep. This is when Kuju realized that the gods had no intention of stopping it either. But what's the point of testing if the disciples are just going to be burned to the ground? Kuju looked at his comrades who were already all covered in abrasions. The young man realized that it was getting harder. He didn't know whose pet this 5-headed dragon was, but it was too capricious. Then Kuju decided to go to extreme measures. He forcefully ordered the dragon to stop. The dragon did so. In an instant, the monster simply froze. The other students looked at what was happening and did not understand why the dragon had stopped. At that moment, a familiar voice was heard behind the backs of the students. Now let's do some restorative magic while we still have a chance. Turning around, Kuju saw a familiar silhouette asking if they were finished. Kishima Takeru. He was the one who had put on this fire show. That was where the young man decided to end it. At the snap of his fingers, the 5-headed dragon simply began to disappear. Kuju realized that Takeru was clearly an expert in fire magic. Takeru, on the other hand, started to approach Kuju at this time. Takeru couldn't believe that such a serious test was so easy for Kuju. The young man then called Kuju just rubbish as he could not even avoid such an attack. Takeru then turned to the rest of the disciples and asked if they were frightened. At this point, Emery stepped in. She ordered Takeru to apologize quickly. Takeru asked her who she was. Emery once again ordered Takeru to apologize to everyone, for it was because of him that the students were hurt. Takeru approached Emery and asked her not to take on too much, calling her a weakling. Takeru had already realized that Emery was the same girl who had confronted him yesterday. After which Takeru reminded Emery that they are heroes, therefore their justice is strength. And if she was so hurt by it, Takeru wanted Emery to make him apologize by force. In that case, the young man would do the same with all his heart and burn Emery to the ground. At least that's what he declared. Then Emery pushed Takeru away from her with the words that she agreed to the duel. These words shocked everyone watching. Takeru, on the other hand, thought that Emery just didn't have the guts. Kuju at this time asked Emery not to do that. The young man was sure that the girl had no chance against Takeru, but Emery only asked Kuju not to stop her. Exposing her blade, Emery declared that this was her fight. When Emery said that this was her fight, Kuju reckoned that this girl was more belligerent than he thought. Then the guy thought about Emery just daring to put herself. At that moment, the guy was called out. It was Phyllis who was sitting in the guy's bag. She asked him not to get in Emery's way. The cat argued that Emery was right and this was her fight. At this time, Takeru, who was already preparing for the fight, claimed that Emery just doesn't understand the difference. The young man claimed that the girl could still leave if she wanted to, but still he thought it was boring. After that, Takeru spread his arms wide and asked Emery to attack. He was giving the girl a head start to land the first blow. Emery thought for a while and, clenching her teeth, decided to attack. Setting up, the girl used the magic called 100 Stage 1 Bud 100. The students who were watching looked at what was happening and didn't realize what kind of unique ability Emery had. At this moment, even Takeru tensed up. Kuju also looked at Emery and realized that this was the inherent ability. She is similar to that cheater ability that some get from the goddess. Seeing the reactions of heroes with the same unique abilities was ridiculous. Kuju saw that Emery's power is supernatural even to them. Suddenly, Emery got down on one knee and leaned on her sword. The girl was very tired. She admitted that she couldn't do it, but she didn't understand why. At that moment, Phyllis said that she was sorry, but it wasn't enough. As it turns out, Emery's strength doesn't match her abilities. That's why the girl is just overpowered. At this moment, Takeru grabbed his head and laughed loudly. He admitted that he had never seen a trash who couldn't even use his own abilities. Also, the young man admitted that the girl had indeed scared him. At that moment, Lala, who had previously been watching everything from the air, began to approach the ground. She stated that she would not allow Takeru to bully the weak. Takeru, on the other hand, asked Lala to crouch down and get off, calling her a little shit. These words angered Lalu, but she could do nothing but run up to Kuju with tears in her eyes and start complaining to him about Takeru. Kuju calmed Lala down and realized how reckless she was. While Lala was hugging him, he turned to Takeru and asked if they could stop this now. At this time, Emori again asked Kuja not to interfere. She said again that this was her fight. Kuju looked at Emori's hands shaking and didn't understand what was wrong with her. Takeru at this time approached Emori and asked why she was shaking. The guy claimed that the girl was not suitable for this academy, after which he asked Emori to knock it off. At that moment, Kuju intervened. He said that the guys were talking too much and suggested that they should be happy that the demons had been destroyed and all the students had passed the test. In response, Kuju received only a fist punch to the face. The blow was so strong that Kuju flew several meters away from Takeru and Emori. Takeru hit Kuju with such force that the guy's fist was even smoking. Takeru then ordered Kuju to shut up. After all, he was already sick of talking. Takeru remembered that Kuju had been here yesterday as well. He claimed that Kuju's abilities were the same as Emori's and asked the young man to show them. But Kuju, rising to his feet after a powerful kick, had refused Takeru. Kuju assured that he simply did not have unique abilities. Kuju, however, knew that he was not from a goddess. He had been summoned by the demon lord. At that moment, Takeru laughed and thought that Kuju was just joking. Takeru thought that Kuju was just an idiot who didn't even have powers. The young man just didn't understand how Kuju still called himself a hero. Takeru didn't think that Kuju was such a scum. In that case, he decided to burn that piece of trash and reached for Kuju's bag. When Takeru took Kuju's bag that had fellies in it and put his fiery finger on it, Kuju's whole life flew before his eyes. No sooner had Takeru put his hand to the bag than Kuju quickly ran up to him and stopped his hand. The guy squeezed Takeru's hand with such force that Takeru's face grimaced in pain. When Kuju snatched his bag from Takeru's hand, Takeru pushed the young man away. At that moment, Emori ran up to Kuju and asked if everything was alright. Kuju, however, apologized to Emori and, throwing her his bag, asked her to hold it. Kuju then turned to Takeru and asked him to show his great special ability. In that case, Takeru decided to happily satisfy Kuju's curiosity. In just a moment, he had already used his magic to show it to the young man. In an instant, Takeru created several magic circles from which attacks poured out. Takeru then declared that his unique ability was to increase the power of fire magic by several hundred times. The observing disciples looked at what was happening and didn't understand what the heck was going on. Takeru at this moment declared that he was going to destroy every single one of the newcomers. In that case, Kuju also decided to show Takeru his magic. Takeru at this time directed all of his attacks directly at the students. But nothing happened. It was as if Takeru's attacks didn't obey him. The other disciples looked at it and didn't understand anything either. Takeru tried to attack Kuja and the others again, but nothing happened. The guy ended up looking at his hand in bewilderment. Why isn't he succeeding? The rest of the heroes at this point began to taunt Takeru. Takeru didn't like it and ordered everyone to stop laughing at him. Eventually, the young man realized that Kuju was capable of artificial intervention. And Takeru was right. Kuju had neutralized Takeru's magic by interfering with his technique. But Kuju didn't lie that he didn't have unique abilities. He could just do most things at the level of his inherent abilities on his own. At that moment, Takeru realized that once he knew what Kuju was capable of, everything became much easier. The young man called Kuju a bastard, and while unleashing his fists, he declared that he would beat the man to a pulp with his fists. At that moment, Takeru's fists seemed to be filled with great strength. After which, without a moment's hesitation, Takeru lunged at Kuja. Kuju first punched Takeru for what had happened before, then for Emori Kamari. The last punch from Kuju was the hardest, for another Takeru sin. For the scumbag trying to burn Fellas, Kuju kicked him with all his might. From that blow, Takeru flew a long distance away like a football. When it was over, the students didn't even realize what had happened. Takeru and Kuju had moved so fast that no one could even see anything. At that moment, Kuju turned on his acting skills again. He assured that Takeru swung his leg, swooped down and hit him. The disciples looked at the strange Kuju and did not understand what was wrong with him. At that moment, Minao finally woke up. The first thing she asked was, what happened here? After looking at the students, Minao realized that no one was dead and told all the heroes who were injured to go to the infirmary, after which the girl allowed the boys to return home. At the snap of her fingers, all the students were transported back to the classroom where their lesson had started. Kuju couldn't believe that it was really over like that. He didn't understand what this test from Minao was all about. At that moment, Minao called out to Kuju and asked if he could show her his hand. Kuju on the other hand asked Minao what she was talking about. The girl in response only smiled caustically and walked out of the classroom. This was when Kuju realized that he had gone too far, even for Felis's sake. Thus they were in sight. Life at school was getting harder and harder for Kuju, and it would only get worse in the future. Suddenly, Kuju came to his senses and realized that he had left his bag with Felis at Emori's place. At that moment, the young man was called out. No sooner did Kuju turn around than hands grabbed both of his arms. It was Emery with Kuju's bag on her shoulder. The delighted girl asked Kuju for permission to call him master. Here the bewildered Kuju definitely understood. It would be difficult. A short time later, Kuju was already sitting at Lala's team party. How did this happen? Let's go back a few hours earlier when Emery asked Kuju to call him master. While Kuju and Emery were standing and holding hands, Maou appeared out of nowhere and claimed she forgot to say something. The girl thus asked all the students to look at the group's assignment in the corridor. Then Maou stated that this school has a platoon system and each group of 2 to 5 members has a goddess in charge. Essentially everyone works as a team. So the squads were divided and the results were Lala's squad in which Kuju ended up. Emery, who was also in the group with Kuju, couldn't be happy that she was on the team with the master. Lala also thought that she was very lucky. The girl didn't even think that she would be in a group exactly with Kuju and Emery. Emery on the other hand thought it was fate at all. Kuju remained silent. Lala asked Kuju if he was happy to be in a group with her. Kuju on the other hand assured that he didn't care whether it was fate or happiness. Emery even dropped her mug at that statement, for which she immediately apologized. Lala at this time did not care about the broken mug at all. Emery apologized to Kuju again and said that she would clean it up right away. Kuju, on the other hand, assured that it was dangerous, so he asked the girl not to touch it directly. The young man claimed that he would do it for her. At this point, Emery remembered her past when her comrades said that she didn't need to fight and they would fight for her. After this memory, Emery became sad. She also said that Kuju was strong enough to defeat Takeru. The girl was confident that the guy knew how to fight. Kuju on the other hand claimed that yesterday he was just lucky and Takeru had messed up the spell by himself. At this point, Emery suddenly asked Kuju to teach her how to fight. The girl firmly stated that she wanted to be strong. Kuju, however, explained that he could not teach the girl anything. Besides, the guy thought it was the job of the goddess who was now curled up in a ball and snoring sweetly on the sofa. At this point, Lala woke up abruptly. She stated that her job was to keep an eye on the heroes. Therefore, in her free time, she rests. Ordinary goddesses are too busy catering to the heroes. Lala claimed that she has no time to give such lectures to her students. Kuju was still unhappy with Lala's behavior as she was not busy. But Lala again turned her back on Emery and Kuju and claimed that she was fed up now, so she was very sleepy. Then Kuju scratched the back of his head lazily and said that he could not teach Emery anything anyway. Kuju assured that he was going to quit altogether because it was too dangerous. These words upset Mary as well. When both Marie and Lala left Kuju's room, the young man was alone with Felis. Felis asked Kuju why he shouldn't give Emery a lesson, because that's the kind of guy who becomes popular with girls. Kuju, on the other hand, felt that he shouldn't stand out here, much less teach someone in this school. The young man couldn't say that by starting to learn from him, Emery wouldn't recognize who he was. Then Felis turned to Kuju again and said that she sincerely appreciated everything he was considering for her. But the cat thought that Kuju was thinking too much. Felis thought that Kuju was too afraid to associate with other people, but the fact was that he shouldn't isolate himself because of her. Felis realized that it was true that when you mess with people, you risk them finding out things they shouldn't know. But she assured that socializing with people was very interesting. At least Felis knew that she would have a noisy time with the boisterous Lala and Emery. Felis thought that it was even great. She wondered what Kuju thought about it. In the morning, when Lala was still sweet and sound asleep, Kuju went for a run. The young man was now running 10 kilometers. After this exercise, he planned to do 100 push-ups and then strength training. It was difficult for him to give up a habit that had been ingrained for 30,000 years. At that moment, Kuju suddenly noticed someone's silhouette. It was Emery, who was diligently swinging her sword. Seeing such a beautiful picture, Kuju was dumbfounded. He decided not to hesitate, so he went to the girl and told her. Seeing her master, Emery was excited. She thought that Kuju was confessing her love to her. The girl was not yet ready for such things, so she was frightened. Kuju, however, tried to explain to the girl that he was talking about her posture. Kuju assured that this was proof that Emery was doing everything right. Also jumping to conclusions, Kuju surmised that Emery had been training quite a bit. Emery confirmed Kuju's words. She did indeed train quite a lot. Suddenly, Kuju asked Emery what the world from which she had been called was like. Then Emery began to talk about what a beautiful place she lived in. The city was beautiful and all the people were very kind. Emery was very glad that the world had been saved. The words about salvation raised questions in Kuju's mind. He thought Emery was one of the fallen heroes who couldn't save the world. Emery, however, explained that she was not alone. As it turned out, the girl was with her class and they all defeated the demon lord together. Except for Emery, of course. Here Kuju assumed that Emery was being bullied or something. He decided not to rack his brains and asked about it directly. But Emery claimed that it was the other way around and those people were good mates. The girl assured that they were strong and kind, and when they found out that Emery was not strong enough to handle her supernatural powers, they protected her by telling her to calm down and defend the capital. The heroes were busy but came to Emery's house once a week to check on her. They brought Emery souvenirs, and when Emery wanted to practice and test her supernatural abilities, everyone was willing to help her. The girl confessed that she loved her comrades very much. That was why she wanted to be strong too. Emery wanted to be useful to those she loved, even if only a little. The girl also added that lately she had been thinking that all her training was in vain. Kuju then asked why. Emery confessed that she is afraid to fight. No matter how much she trains in actual combat, she is always shaken. Yesterday, she couldn't do anything. In the end, Emery thought she was just a wimp and a coward. The girl was sure that she wasn't fit to be a hero at all, which meant she would have to just give up soon. But Kuju assured her that it didn't matter. The guy thought it was normal to be afraid. He argued that it didn't matter what Emery couldn't do. What mattered was what the girl could do. Sure, she was shaking and couldn't do anything, but still she could stand up for the weak. Kuju admitted that he himself was only able to move when Takeru wanted to burn his back, but Emery moved faster than anyone else for the sake of all the students. The young man claimed that Emery could conquer her fear, so all she had to do was learn how to fight. Kuju assured that Emery should not give up on herself because in her opinion she was born a coward. Holding out his hand to the girl, Kuju stated that Emery could do anything even if she was scared. Kuju also added that he would help her with basic training in magic control. Also, the girl can learn how to use her supernatural abilities first. Kuju assured that everything depends only on her. Tears appeared in Emery's eyes at such words. She believed Kuju for some reason and held out her hand to him in return. When Marie stood up, Kuju also asked her not to call him master, for from now on they would be in the same group. Emery then said that she would look forward to working with Kuju from now on. The girl also admitted that this environment makes her a little embarrassed. These words made Kuju laugh. Thus Kuju's school life continued. But the students are the heroes who save the world, and they have the most powerful weapon of all, unique supernatural abilities, so there wasn't much to learn during class, each of the students killing time as they pleased. The high school students who played the role of instructors knew this and didn't pay attention and just continued with the class. Nothing was expected of heroes, especially from the fallen. They were not assigned particularly important missions or duties. They repeated basic training and classroom instruction every day. The academy was so quiet that it was almost discouraging. Kuju, on the other hand, continued to spend time with Lala and Emery. The young man thought that if he could befriend those two girls, he and Fellis would be safe here. However, while Kuju was thinking about everything, 2 weeks passed and something finally happened. One day, Kuju and Emery returned to the room as usual where Lala and Fellis were waiting for them. Emery missed Fellis very much, so she immediately rushed to the cap. As it turned out, Emery was picking catnip. At this moment, Kuju realized that this place had become some sort of shelter. At that moment, the young man was called out by Olala. The girl held out an envelope to Kuju and explained that she had received it from an important person in the school. This person was the one who told Lala to give this letter to Kuju. Kuju did not hesitate to print out the letter and started reading it. In the letter was an expulsion notice. Warning: thus, if Kuju and Emery's current situation did not improve within 1 week, they would be expelled from school. After reading the contents, Kuju and Emery were horrified. Kuju was very indignant and did not understand at all what the reason for his expulsion was. He asked Lala about it, but she knew nothing. Suddenly, Emery noticed one line in the letter. It said that the reason for the exclusion was due to not having enough SP. Emery knew that SP is hero points and a kind of internal score at school. This score is added for academic success and successful completion of assignments. It is reduced for breaking school rules and failing assignments. Thus, it is an important number for life in this school. Kuju had minus 3000 SP. He didn't understand why so much. At that moment, Lala noticed and said that there were many numbers written on the back of the letter. Then Kuju turned over a piece of paper and began to read out the contents. Emery, a window pane has been broken minus 10 SP. Emery, practical training due to a fall minus 5 SP. Emery, vomiting in the canteen detrimental to school hygiene minus 15 SP. Emery, contacting lost and found office more than 50 times minus 100 SP. Emery was so ashamed that she fell to the floor and flooded with tears. The girl assured that she was very sorry and asked the boys not to look at her like that. She claimed that she didn't do it all on purpose. But Kuju realized that this was not the time to blame anyone. He felt that they had to find a way to score over 3000 points within a week. The depressed Emery, on the other hand, didn't understand at all how they could do that. At that moment, Fellis reminded Kuju of her existence. She asked the young man not to get upset about such things, as she had just what he needed. After saying that, the cat pointed her paw at some book lying on the table. Kuju went over to the table, picked up the book, and looking at it, he realized that there was a list of tasks written there for this month. Expeditionary mission to defeat the Demon Lord plus 3000 SP. At this moment, a conversation took place between the two academy members. The girl entered the room of the dark-haired guy with glasses and said that they had decided that the younger member would go with them on the mission to defeat the Overlord along with B11. The dark-haired guy, upon hearing the words about the B11 guys, realized that they were the same losers. The young man assured that even if it was for SP, he couldn't believe that he would have to work with such filth. Guy claimed that he would use his aerial attack to show the outcasts their place if they ever got in his way. So the day of the mission to destroy the Demon King has arrived. Kuju and Emery, who were invited for this mission, came to the meeting place, which is in the square. Lala also went with the guys to support them. Emeria was looking forward to it when she learnt that they would meet the senior members of the squad. The girl was curious what amazing people the senior squad members were and felt that she had a lot to learn from them. Lala at this time turned to Phyllis, whom she had also brought on the mission, and suggested that the cat should have some fun. But Phyllis doubted that they would have fun. Kuju at this time looked at the two girls and realized that they were very carefree. But Kuju didn't understand the person who got them into this mess. At this moment, Kuju was approached. "You are late." It was the same dark-haired guy with glasses who had threatened to kill the newcomers yesterday if they got in his way. He had assured that it had been 15 minutes at first, calling the newcomers incompetent heroes. Kuju grabbed his head and apologized to the strict guy. At that moment, the dark-haired guy introduced himself. His name was Arata Kegoku, the leader of the A25 team. Arata explained that he would be working with the members of Team B11, that is, with Kuju, Lala, and Emery. When Kegoku introduced himself, he decided to get straight to the point and asked the boys if they knew their role in the future battle. An overjoyed Emery said that she knew her role, which was to defeat the Demon King and bring peace to the world. But Kegoku assured that the girl was wrong and the members of Group B11 were here to stay out of the way of the elders, at most to provide support. Also, Kyogoku added that this is only in the third stage and the elders will handle the Demon Lord by themselves. Here Kuju did not understand what stage Kyogoku was talking about. Then he asked the elders what was a stage. One of the elders replied that a stage is the name given to the threat level of the various worlds. The young man explained that it is basically a classification. The last one is called the 9th stage. They are divided into 9 categories according to the level of danger, ranging from the stage where there are no demons to the stage where there is an invasion of other worlds. It is said that there are also worlds with a 10th stage. In that case, Kuju wondered why they were doing it together with the elders this time if the heroes could conquer it alone. The senior member wanted to explain everything to Kuju again, but Kegoku grabbed the guy's head and sealed him into the ground. This action stunned everyone. Kyogoku, on the other hand, asked his comrade a question. Who authorized you to instruct Group B11? Kyogoku claimed that he had decided that Group B11 didn't need to explain anything. His comrade, on the other hand, explained that he did not mean that. He thought that Group B11 didn't know what they were doing. At that moment, Emery stepped in for the unfortunate guy lying on the ground and asked Kegoku what he was doing. The girl assured that they were against violence, but the other guys in the older group prevented Emery from getting closer to the victims. Kegoku then asked Kuju and his team if they wanted to know why the seniors wanted to team up with the newcomers in the 3rd stage. Kegoku assured that it was all because of SP. The young man claimed that they were getting a bonus for training the next generation. That's the only reason they take the newbies with them. In other words, the elders don't need the help of newcomers. Kyogoku argued that all the beginners have to do is just stay out of the way. That way, the elders would not have to take care of slow learners. Kyogoku believed that it is easy SP for beginners without any difficulties. Lastly, the dark-haired guy only said that he hoped that beginners didn't need to be told twice. At this moment, a beautiful goddess appeared from nowhere and asked, "What's wrong?" Kuju looked at the goddess and immediately realized that it was a Grupa goddess. The name of this goddess is Freifija. Kyogoku turned to her and said that they were fine and there was no problem. Freifija, however, argued that Kyogoku couldn't treat the newcomers like that because they still had to work together. The goddess assured that the dark-haired guy with glasses shouldn't show that kind of behavior. Kyogoku then said that he was sorry. After that, the goddess said that she had good news. The girl claimed that if the group was successful in this mission, the academy would raise Kyogoku's personal rank to B+. The girl assured that she was proud to be specifically in charge of Group A. Kegoku said after saying that he would work even harder for the sake of the academy. Goddess, on the other hand, liked that Kyogoku was as reliable as ever. Afterwards, the girl apologized to the B11 group for being late. The goddess then approached the B11 group and introduced herself. Kuju and Emery introduced themselves in response. Freifija, on the other hand, said that she was looking forward to working with the newcomers. Kuju and Emery at this time just froze with surprise. Lala didn't like that. She could see that Kuju's reaction was very different. Phyllis also didn't like the fact that Kuju had such an eye for the goddess. The girl mentally argued that she was a billion times more beautiful than Freyphasia. Freyphasia at that moment suggested that all the guys should go on a journey to the world that was looking for their salvation. Upon seeing the gate of transition, Emery was amazed. She realized that beyond this gate was another world, so she was very worried. But seeing Kuju's confident gaze, the girl was transformed. After that, the boys began to climb the stairs to the portal. When all the heroes entered the stairs and the door disappeared. Then the same door appeared in another world where hundreds of people were waiting for the heroes. After a while, the heroes were met by the king of the kingdom of Damrit. The first thing he did was to apologize to the boys for keeping them waiting. Then the king introduced himself. His name was Damers. Damers also saw fit to thank the heroes for accepting his invitation. Though rather modestly, the kingdom had prepared a small feast to entertain the arriving heroes, so the king hoped that the guests would enjoy everything. At this time, Emery and Lala were already chowing down on the food that was on the feast table. Kuju looked at the two girls with the understanding that it was impolite not to eat what was being served, but he also thought that such behavior was strange in front of the king. Looking at the magnificent castle from inside, Kuju realized that he had never thought that the other world outside the empty world could be so picturesque. Kegoku turned to the king at that moment and said that they were wasting time. The young man then suggested that the king dispense with idle chatter. Then the king moved closer to the point. So, the army is exhausted after repeated battles with the demon lord's army. The people are suffering from high taxes. The demons are also plundering the fields and polluting the soil. The land becomes poorer and food shortages begin in the countryside. The royal capital is under pressure from refugees from towns and villages that have been attacked. The inhabitants of the royal capital are under great stress. Public order is deteriorating. The list of problems is endless. The king claimed that this world was threatened by the demon lord. Kegoku, on the other hand, claimed that he already knew what was going on, so the guy only wanted to know one thing: information about the whereabouts of the demon lord of this world, Jigjorg. Kegoku also said that they didn't need the kingdom's troops either. He asked the king to use the troops to defend the castle and rebuild the cities. Then one of the king's subordinates said that they could organize an elite force to help the heroes in any way they could. But Kyogoku stood his ground. He decided to speak plainly and bluntly, therefore he said that the kingdom's troops would only hinder them. Kuju assured that the heroes would take care of the demon lord if the king told them where he was. Also, the dark-haired hero asked the king not to do anything unnecessary. After that, Kegoku pointed to Kyuja and his group and said that those guys would take care of the details. Gruppa then began to leave the room. Lastly, Kyogoku said that Squad B would stay in the castle and defend the capital, and Gruppa would invade the demon lord's castle. After that, Kegoku decided to leave the king behind. At last, the young man only said that they had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. When Gruppa left, the confused Kuju and Emery looked at each other. They realized that there was nothing they could do about it. After a while, Group B was taken to their room. The room was so beautiful that Emery doubted that they were allowed to be here. Lala, who had eaten heartily, flashed over to the couch and collapsed on it. The girl argued that it was the perfect time to get some sleep. In a couple of moments, Lala was already sound asleep. Emery, on the other hand, was very happy that they had been given the mission to defend the capital. The girl thought that it was a big responsibility, so she suggested that Kuju do her best. Emery thought that she and her group had a lot of things to think about. For example, about the order of protection of the patrol routes. But Kuju felt very sorry for her. When Emery looked at him, the young man reminded the girl that she wanted to protect someone with her hands. Emery remembered that herself. Of course, if she could, she would want to defeat the demon lord herself. The most important thing was that Emery would want to protect everyone in this world. The girl assured that she was happy if she could be useful to someone, even if it was behind the scenes. Kuju listened to Emery and finally said that people like her should be called the dumbest of all. Since the guy said this while turning away from Emery, the girl didn't hear what the guy had just called her stupid. So she asked Kuju, what did he just say? Kuju, however, refused to answer the question. At this point, Fellis, who had been watching Kuju and Emery, turned to the young man and said that she was very happy that Kuju had found a good friend. But also Fellis warned that she might become jealous if Kuju continued to cling to Emery and left the cat alone. At that moment, an unknown person entered the balcony. When the confused Kuju and Emery turned around, the stranger asked if they were really heroes from another world. Without waiting for an answer, the stranger bared her blade and urged the heroes to fight her, claiming that it was time to set things right. The first thing on Kuju's mind when he saw the mysterious stranger was, who is she? But at this time, the stranger was already ready to pounce on the heroes. Emery reacted quickly and drew her sword and was ready to defend herself. When the stranger pounced on Emery, the girl tried to attack her, but she dodged. The stranger managed to hit Emery in the stomach with her blade. Emery fell to the floor, and the stranger went on. In the end, Emery seemed very weak to the mysterious girl. At that moment, she was attacked by Kuju, clawing her arm. In an instant, the young man managed to plow the stranger to the floor. Here the girl realized that Kuju was strong. Kuju at that moment ordered the stranger not to move. The young man then looked at Emery, who was giving signs of life, and realized that the girl was fine. Kuju noticed that the stranger had stabbed Emery in the stomach, which meant that she didn't mean to kill her. In that case, the guy decided to listen to this intruder now. That's why he asked her to help carry Emery to the couch first, unless of course she wanted him to break her arm. Listening to those words, Fellas found this way of carrying on a conversation interesting. After a while, Emery was already lying on the sofa, but still in a bad condition. Kuju knew that everything would be fine since Emery had been training hard. What the young man considered more important was the movement the stranger made when she attacked. After analyzing the guest, Kuju thought that she was one of those local heroes who alone should defeat the Demon Lord. Then the stranger finally took off her hood and introduced herself. Her name was Henry. Indeed, there was a time when she was called a hero. That was until the goddess told Henry that true heroes would emerge from the netherworld. Then the girl asked Kuju if the goddess had spoken of them. Kuju, however, asked why Henry attacked them even if the goddess had indeed spoken of them. Henry, on the other hand, claimed that she just wanted to find out. She didn't know if the heroes who had arrived were worth entrusting the world to them. The girl assured that there were many people in this world that she cared about. Therefore, Henry is willing to do anything to help them. She thought that she would rather get rid of the heroes herself if they were just brats who called themselves heroes because they wanted fame. But Henry quickly realized that this was definitely not about Emery. The girl had heard that Kuju and Emery clearly didn't want fame. But Henry assured that the Demon Lord is cruel and cunning. He could take the arriving heroes by surprise at every turn. Henry was confident that the heroes would not be able to defeat the Overlord in their current state. That's when Kuju realized that Henry couldn't handle the Demon Lord either. Henry, on the other hand, admitted that she was pathetic and couldn't protect anyone. Her father, her mother, her whole village was taken away from her. That's why Henry picked up a sword to avenge them. But the power she needed was too great. Henry cannot attain it. She is always on the edge in every battle. Miraculously, Henry is still alive. When she fought the Overlord the first time, she couldn't do anything. But then the girl managed to save herself. She was depressed, for she faced her own weakness and realized that she was not even close to being a hero. Henry knew that she was neither brave nor strong. She just thought of herself as a loser, out for revenge, totally unsuited for the role of a hero. Henry apologized to Kuju for her whining. She just wanted to say that no matter how confident the arriving heroes were, they shouldn't let their guard down. Kuju listened to Henry and asked her not to worry. The young man explained that he and Emery were just replacements and those who were going to defeat the Overlord were the real elite. Kuju claimed that he was confident that the other heroes would defeat the Overlord. Henry, on the other hand, only hoped that this would be the case. She remembered saying that she was unworthy, but would like to beat the Overlord with her own hands if the heroes were still going to defeat him. Henry really wanted to smash the Overlord's red nose. Out of frustration, Henry sat down on the couch and cried. She realized that no one would let her beat the Demon Lord with her own hands. The girl just wanted to save the world and thought there was nothing wrong with that. At that moment, Emery woke up. She took Henry's hand and said that she had had a similar experience. Emery recounted that she was the one helpless and the problem was solved without her. This feeling of helplessness was familiar to Emery. She may not have suffered as much as Henry, but she understood her well. Emery claimed that even afterwards she continued to hold the sword in her hands. So she wanted Henry to keep fighting and maybe someday, not in the name of revenge, she would prove herself. Suddenly, Emery realized that supporting Henry was somehow wrong. After all, the stranger had attacked her not so long ago. Henry also laughed at Emery's lecturing the one who had defeated her. Emery, on the other hand, assured that she didn't want to lecture Henry. Suddenly, Emery introduced herself again, for Emery didn't know her name yet. The girl then asked Emery her name. Then Emery introduced herself and Henry apologized for attacking her earlier. Emery came to her senses and began to talk indignantly about how hurt she was. Henry, on the other hand, assured Emery that Emery's abdominal muscles were simply underdeveloped. Emery asked Henry to stop this talk because she was already worried about her stomach. At that moment, Phyllis, who was lying on the balcony railing, called out to Kuju. Kuju then went out to the balcony and asked what was wrong. Phyllis, on the other hand, explained that she had a bad feeling. There was a magical ripple in the air. Such nights are usually harbingers of bad luck. Phyllis argued that one can never be too careful. After all, Kuju is the hero in charge of the castle's defense. At this moment, Kuju glanced at Emery and Henry, who were still spoiling. Suddenly, the young man asked Phyllis, why is there someone who cares so much about this world? Why are they from another world summoned as heroes? After all, if the goddesses want to protect the world, they should give strength to the local heroes. Phyllis, on the other hand, explained that the goddesses would do that if they could. But when things go wrong, earthlings are needed. Earthlings were originally created as warriors of great power. They have the right to do so, given by the gods, and only Earthlings can realize it to the full. Fellis argued that if the goddesses could harness the power of Earthlings without restraint, they would destroy themselves. History had proven that people with power would constantly struggle. Therefore, the goddess, who watches over the world tree, decided to spread out the inhabitants of the earth. Then Kuju guessed that the academy was run jointly by the goddess and humans. Fellis confirmed what Kuju said and also added that it was quite dangerous. Before Fellis could finish speaking, she jumped into Kuju's arms, feeling a strange feeling. At that moment, a circus tent appeared right in front of Kuju and Fellis. Immediately, Kuju realized that it was spatial transference magic. At this moment, a worried Henry ran out onto the balcony. She also sensed the presence of magic. Kuju, on the other hand, looking at the skeletons coming out of the circus, asked Henry if she knew what it was. To which Henry replied, he came by himself. Kegoku at this time was already pulling his gloves over his hands, preparing for battle. He felt the presence of the Overlord and was even glad that this monster had saved them a lot of trouble. At this moment, the Demon Lord was already ready to show himself. He addressed the people of the kingdom with good cheer, calling people his poor cattle. There he was, Gigyoj in all his glory. At this time Kuju, Emery, Fellis and Henry looked at Gigyoj and could not move. There he was, the Demon Lord whom Henry so desires to kill. When Gigyoj appeared before the heroes, Henry first of all asked the monster how he dared to show himself in front of her and what the hell he was doing here. Gigyoj, on the other hand, assured her that he had come to see Henry, for she was going to kill his precious subordinates. Using his clowning skills, Gigyoj claimed that he could only sleep well knowing that Henry would not touch his subordinates. The Lord assured that Henry would only know what it was like and would only understand if her father and mother died. Here Gigyoj turned on the fool, and then laughed and reminded Henry that he had killed her father and mother. Henry was furious and was ready to pounce on the Overlord, but Kuju stopped the girl in time. He assured that it was just a provocation. He asked Henry not to let her feelings get the better of her. Kuju himself, however, could not believe that Gigyoj had attacked them from the rear. At this moment, the king's soldiers had already prepared their cannons for the Lord's attack. Without thinking long, the commander gave the order to attack. At that moment, all the cannons fired. The target was Jigjorg's head. Seeing the soldiers with magic cannonballs, Group B was shocked. At this moment, the smoke from the cannons cleared and Gigyoj's head was not on his shoulders. Seeing this, the soldiers thought that they had succeeded in defeating the Demon Lord. The people of the kingdom, looking at the decapitated Jigjorg, began to rejoice. But it wasn't that simple, and Henry knew it. The girl cried out that the Overlord was too strong. At that moment, Gigyoj confirmed Henry's words. Without thinking long, the Overlord decided to throw a party. As it turned out, it was just a doll from which demons that looked like terrifying toys eventually began to emerge. The soldiers were shocked to see such a huge number of monsters and didn't understand how they got here. Kuju, on the other hand, knew that it was all a big body puppet, and Gigyoj is somewhere else. The young man knew that if nothing was done the civilians would suffer, and now was not the time to say that Group B was only a backup. At that moment Henry pointed to the roof of the royal fortress. It was Group A. Kagoki, on the other hand, decided to start executing the plan and gave orders to his comrades. A flash of light, a blessing, Lyrian serenade. These magic techniques were used by the members of Group A. They all gave their power to Kegoku to make a final attack. Henry, on the other hand, didn't understand what these guys were doing at all. But Kuju knew that the three guys in Group A had different kinds of magic, different kinds of enhancement magic. Perhaps it was because of their unique abilities. The three of them are strengthening Kegoku. This means that Kegoku's unique ability is about to be seen by everyone. At this moment, Jigjorg's monsters were already close to Group A and wanted to attack. Finally, Kegoku demonstrated his unique ability by crushing all the monsters. Air attack. In an instant, with his attack, Kegoku shattered Jigjorg's dolls in pieces. All those watching were dumbfounded, for with a single blow Kyagoku had crushed many demons. At that moment, Gigyoj returned. He was almost invisible through the rain of blood that poured down as if from a cornucopia. Gigyoj confessed that he didn't think it would be this bad. He realized that the heroes of the other world were no joke. Kuju looked at the real Jigjorg now, not the puppets, and realized that this monster was not a giant and was no different in size from ordinary humans. Jigjorg at this time said that there was a hint of powerful magic here, so he decided to come and check it out. The Lord admitted that he didn't think that the kingdom would actually summon heroes from another world. At this time, Kegoku turned to Jigjorg and called him a fool, for the monster knew the heroes were here and yet he had come this far. Jigjorg on the other hand asked Kegoku not to say that, for it was rude. The Lord argued that the heroes looked weak. Gigyoj thought he was like the heroes who, when they see a child who is excited about a new toy, want to destroy it before his eyes. Gigyoj assured that this was why he had come here. He referred to the inhabitants of this kingdom as toys who rejoice that they will finally be saved. In parallel, Gigyoj had already begun to create magic circles. Henry looked at this and was horrified by Gigyoj's immense power. The Lord at this moment said that the whole performance was supposed to be a gift for Henry, but now he had decided to make it only after he had killed everyone. After these words, Gigyoj turned to Kyogok and bade him farewell. After the farewell, a tremendous amount of power was expelled from the magic circles. Volti of Elvarez. Looking at the approaching attack, Kegoku made a shield to protect himself. In the end, Kegoku was able to protect himself and remain alive and unharmed. Gigyoj at this time was nonplussed and did not understand what had happened. Kegoku at this moment appeared already above the Overlord's head to attack. At last, the guy only told Jigjorg about his weakness. No sooner had Jigjorg attacked Kegoku than the hero cut off the Lord's arm. Kegoku then dealt another blow to Jigjorg in the abdominal area. Jigjorg, however, only had time to say something about hating rubbish, and Kegoku stated that he was not here to flirt with the dead. The hero claimed that he had nothing to say to the clown. Looking at Kegoku trying to attack again, Gigyoj asked the hero to stop, for this was all off script. But the thing is, Kegoku doesn't care about the Overlord's script. The hero considers it a waste of time. With those words, Kegoku dealt a final blow to Gigyoj. Eventually, the Overlord began to dissolve into space. This was when Kuju realized that Group A's style was to reinforce 3 people at once, and Kegoku, who had the unique ability to manipulate the super-fast wind responsible for attacking. After his triumph, Kegoku flew on wings to Group B standing on the balcony and asked if they now understood the difference between real heroes and low-level losers like them. Kegoku then relayed to his comrades via telepathy that they had done their job and now needed to prepare to retreat. At this point, the people came to their senses and began to cheer. Henry was crushed at the thought that Gigyoj, whom she couldn't even reach, had been killed in one blow. At that moment, Imari cried out loudly. In the air, black energy suddenly began to accumulate. It was Gigyoj, or rather, it was his head. But the Demon Lord managed to say that he would not forgive Kyogok for this. By calling Kegoku a bastard, Gigyoj showed that he had no intention of forgiving him. Seeing the Overlord again, Kuju was astonished. How did Jigjorg stay alive after such an attack? Jigjorg at this time asked Kegoku to look into his eyes. When Kegoku looked up at the Overlord, Jigjorg declared that he remembered that. Whereupon the Lord demonstrated a trick to all his spectators and, after saying goodbye, disappeared. Kegoku, on the other hand, was not much excited about Jigjorg's escape. Gray was sure that the Overlord was now weaker, and after all, it was only stage 3. Henry at this point shouted loudly that the heroes couldn't just let this go. The girl assured that the Overlord might still have an ace up his sleeve. Kegoku, hearing Henry's cries, turned to her and said that he didn't need the advice of amateurs. The hero claimed that he and his group were professionals. These words infuriated Henry, but there was nothing she could do about it. At this point, the people began to cheer and praise the heroes. Henry, on the other hand, hearing these shouts of joy, was depressed. Kuju looked at the girl and understood what she was feeling right now. That same night, fireworks erupted in the kingdom. The people threw a great feast in honor of one small victory over the Demon Lord. Kuju was on the same balcony in the castle at this time and watched the cheering people. At that moment, Imari and Lala came out to him. The girls were also amazed at the large number of people in the streets of the kingdom. Kuju turned around and said with a smile on his face that the people deserved a rest. They were celebrating the defeat of the Monster Lord. Seeing the fun they were having on the streets of the kingdom, Lala wanted to go and have fun too, but Kuju firmly forbade this to the goddess. Lala was angered by Kuju's prohibition and asked why she was not allowed to go there. Kuju, however, explained that there would be a big commotion if the goddess went there. Imari also asked Lala to be patient as it was getting late. But Lala stood her ground. After all, it's a festival. Imari then said that she would instead give Lala chips and coke when they get back to their world. And if Lala behaved well, she would also give her pudding. This tempting offer pleased Lala. Proudly leaving the balcony, the goddess declared that she was already an adult and there were enough children at the festival. Looking at the happy Lala, Kuju remarked that this goddess was easy to deal with. At that moment, Felis jumped on Kuju's shoulder and said that she was also interested in festivals. Kuju, using telepathy, apologized to Felis and explained that she too would have to wait until next time. In the meantime, the young man felt that they shouldn't leave a depressed Henry sitting alone on the sofa in the room. The girl was still reeling from Kegoku's victory over the Overlord. She was depressed and considered herself powerless. Kuju, FKDis, and Imari looked at Henry's condition with sympathy, but there was nothing they could do. At that moment there was a knock on the door of the room and asked if they could come in. Kuju allowed no one to enter. It turned out to be one of the members of Group A. Seeing him, Kuju and Imari were a little surprised. The young man, however, introduced himself. Yuki Shindo. The guy explained that he was just a maintenance man of Team A since he had a rather low rank. As it turned out, Yuki wanted to talk to Team B. Taking a seat in the chair, Yuki first apologized for his leader who had been very rude to Team B during the day. Kuju and the others at this time continued to sit with puzzled faces. Yuki continued, "He assured me that Kegoku is not a bad person. He is a rationalist. Kegoku tries to avoid wasting energy and interacts with as few people as possible." Therefore, Yuki was sure that there were many instances that Group B would take offense to. Yuki assured that he understood what was wrong, that's why he apologized. At this time, the carefree Lala declared that she, as the goddess, was giving Kegoku special permission to use. Here Kuju realized that he would have to think again about the pudding. Yuki turned his attention to Henry at this time. He knew what her name was, but to be sure, he asked again. When Henry confirmed what Yuki was not mistaken, Yuki said that the king had told him about her. That Henry had been protecting the country all this time. Bowing his head, Yuki said that he was sorry. Yuki thought that they, the outsiders, had appropriated Henry's merits and it was Henry who should be praised for saving the world. Henry, on the other hand, assured him that everything was fine and she was happy with everything as long as everyone was safe. At this point, Emery noticed how kind Yuki was. The girl confessed that she thought everyone on the team was a villain. Yuki chuckled and explained that everyone is different. Yuki assured that the rest of his team members were heroes, different in strength and background. The young man claimed that he was the lowest of the low since he had a rank of F. Showing his cross of salvation depicted on his arm, Yuki claimed that he was just lucky and happened to get the cross of salvation. The young man believed that he was just like all fallen heroes if he was honest. Before Yuki was drafted into the academy, in his world he had failed to defeat the Demon King. In those days, all Yuki did was curse his worthless self. But one day, the heroes that were sent by the goddess appeared. After defeating the Demon Lord along with them, Yuki received this mark on his hand. So the guy just took advantage of someone else's good fortune. Yuki thought he was just a poor imitation of a hero. After all, if you think about it that way, no one here right now is a hero. Suddenly, Yuki turned to Henry and said that he understood her disappointment. The young man assured that that was why he wanted to ask her for forgiveness, let it bring her this comfort. Yuki believed that the credit for the victory did not belong only to the heroes who had arrived, for it was Henry who had fought and defended the country until the heroes arrived. Therefore, Yuki was confident that through her efforts, Henry had kept this country alive. After saying that, Yuki headed for the door with a smile on his face. Kuju, on the other hand, asked if Yuki was going to leave already, to which the young man replied that he and Gruppo were moving out now to defeat the Demon Lord. Yuki claimed that he thought he and the group would decide everything in the morning, but Kegoku is very impatient. In that case, Group B had nothing else to do but wish Yuki good luck. Henry, on the other hand, lastly wished Yuki to defeat the Overlord. The girl assured that she was counting on heroes. Then Yuki, with a smile on his face, asked the guys to give it to Group A. After Yuki left, Kuju thought that if all the members of Group A were such nice people, it would be easier to find common ground with them. Phyllis, on the other hand, preferred all the characters to be arrogant. She knew that the soft-hearted always die young. Then Kuju remarked that Phyllis lived for hundreds of thousands of years, which meant that she was arrogant. But Phyllis argued that it only meant that she was not as kind as Yuki. Kuju, on the other hand, asked Phyllis not to worry in the end. The young man was confident that Group A's true heroes. The next morning, the royal bell rang. A couple of hours later, there were crowds of people in the streets. Among them was Group A and Henry. Henry realized that such a large number of people were just waiting for the moment of peace. Everyone wants to see the triumphant return of the heroes who defeated the Demon Lord. Kuju at this time was only concerned about whether it was possible to walk with the goddess here. Lala at this time cried out loudly, complaining that someone had grabbed her wing. As it turned out, it was some fat guy who thought that the little girl was dressed up as a goddess. Lala quickly punched the fat man and said that she was a real goddess and touching her wings was harassment. At this point, Emery was already concerned because the heroes were running late as it was already 10 o'clock on the clock. Kuju was in agreement with Emery. At this moment, a magic circle began to appear in the passage. The people saw this and began to cheer loudly, but what the residents saw next shocked and caused absolutely everyone to freeze. The half-dead heroes of Group A emerged from the magic circle. Kuju shouted loudly in horror, "What does this mean?" Group B began to squeeze through the crowd of confused kingdom residents to reach Group A. When Kuju called out to Group A, the two only moaned exhaustedly. So the heroes were alive after all. In that case, Kuju decided not to delay. He ordered Henry to tell the guards to call for help. Emery, on the other hand, was asked by Kuju to help him with the first aid because she should have learned something by now. At this point, a worried Lala with Phyllis in her arms asked what should she do. Kuju, on the other hand, simply asked Lala to be quiet. When the guy tried to get up, he was grabbed by his leg by Yuki. With tears in his eyes, the hero confessed that Group A had failed. At this moment, Kuju experienced a titanic hatred towards Jigjorg. After a while, all the heroes were already under the care of doctors. Not all of them were awake, and according to the chief surgeon, the heroes were not on the verge of death, but their roots were severely depleted. Lala, upon hearing such news, was alarmed and did not understand what could have gone wrong, for yesterday Kegoku had won a stunning victory over the Overlord. Kuju, on the other hand, knew that the root was the soul, and it doesn't matter if the heroes are cured on the outside. Without the root, a person will never regain consciousness. Only Yuki's root barely survived, but he was also badly damaged, so for a while, the hero will lie like this. The force is so powerful that it could rob the hero of his root. The problem is, who could take the hero's roots? From what Kuju saw in yesterday's battle, it was that the Demon Lord's strength far exceeded that of Tima naturally. There was no way he could take the hero's roots. That was why Kuju was certain that there was something more behind it all. Kuju also asked Lala if they really couldn't wait to be rescued from the academy. Lala, on the other hand, apologized to the boys and said that as long as Miss Freyfisia was awake, Lala wouldn't be able to get to the gate on her own anyway. At that moment, Henry appeared. She was wearing the same clothes she was wearing when Group B was attacked. Emery realized that Henry was going somewhere and asked her where she was going, but Henry only silently headed towards the door. When Emery ran up to her, Henry replied that she was going to fulfill her role as a hero. After all, even the otherworldly heroes who were the hope of the kingdom have been defeated. Because of this, the city was shrouded in fear. Henry believed that someone must act. Immediately, Emery tried to stop Henry because it was dangerous. Henry assured that if they did nothing, they would all die. At this point, Kuju, pouring water from a pitcher into a glass, said that they were all alarmed and frightened, and the only person they could turn to was Henrich, for she had been doing this all her life. Kuju assured that if Henry left town, everyone would start worrying even more. The academy would soon notice that something was wrong, and when that happens, stronger heroes will come to the rescue. Kuju argued that they would just have to wait for them. That would be the best thing they could do. First of all, Kuju asked Henry to calm down, holding out a glass of water to her. Kuju asked this of Henry for her own sake and for the sake of those she wants to help. Henry took the glass of water from Kuju's hands, drank it, coughed and headed out again, saying that she did not like the idea of just waiting. Lastly, Henry said that she was just going to go check out the city, so the guys shouldn't worry. But Emery doubted that everything would definitely be fine, so the girl decided to go with her. At that moment, Kuju asked Emery to stop and started digging into his inner jacket pocket. Eventually, the young man pulled out a ring and asked Emery to take it. Surprised, Emery took the silver ring in her hands. Kuju, on the other hand, explained that it was just a small good luck charm for peace of mind. At the realization that Kuju had given her, a woman, a ring, Emery was thrilled. Lastly, Kuju asked the fleeing Emery not to think about it too much and to walk faster, for the girl was in danger of losing Henry. Emery, however, ran away from Kuju with only one thought. Mr. Kuju had given her a ring, and a ring is only given in one case. After Emery left, Kuju irritatedly sat down on the sofa where a dejected Lala was sitting. At one point, Lala laid her head on the young man's legs. Kuju was visibly confused and asked if everything was alright. Lala replied that she was fine, just a little tired. In that case, Kuju decided that Lala needed to rest properly in bed, but Lala didn't want to. Lala just snuggled into the young man's legs and said that she was fine here. In that case, Kuju allowed Lala to sleep on his feet. When Lala fell asleep, Felis used telepathy to ask Kuju what he was going to do, to which Kuju replied that he was only going to wait. But Felis doubted that the guy really wanted to wait. Kuju, on the other hand, felt that he just didn't have any options. Laying Lala down on the couch, Kuju said that he wanted to get some rest since he was on patrol today. But first, Kuju wanted to go get something to eat. Felis, on the other hand, only gave the young man a glance. He passed by the ward of the heroes who were still unconscious, then past the confused and frightened people who had only to pray. The children in the streets were also in tears. What he saw made Kuju very angry. After a while, he found a deserted place and made a magic circle. He used it to get to the castle with Felis's treasure. Looking around, Kuju realized that it had been a long time since he had been here. But there was only one thing he needed here: Lavinkin's sword. Without thinking long, Kuju walked over to the sword and grasped it with both hands. Then Kuju began to pull it out of the magic circle with all his might. Of course, it was not easy for him. In the end, the young man succeeded. Sweating, Kuju realized that he would never get used to it. After all, taking the sword with him was still a pain in the heel. Taking Lavinkin's sword, Kuju wanted to head back. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice. "Are you still here?" Turning around, Kuju saw Felis in the form of a girl sitting on the window. Kuju was happy to see Felis and asked if she knew he was coming, to which Felis replied that of course she knew, for they had known each other for many years. After that, Felis jumped down from the window and asked Kuju what he was going to do. The girl wondered if Kuju would chicken out. Then Kuju asked if she was going to stop him. Felis, on the other hand, smiled and asked if the young man was afraid that it could be stopped. Kuju was annoyed that Felis was reading him like that. Phyllis, on the other hand, assured that she was powerless against Kuju. So would the young man stop if Phyllis cried and begged? This cowardly question again displeased Kuju. Phyllis at this time pounced on Kuju with hugs and words that he was a real pain in the 5th point. Phyllis assured that she was not going to say anything, much less stop him. It was just a girl asking Kuju to let her walk him out. Hugging the hero tightly, Phyllis only wished him a happy journey. Kuju, on the other hand, assured that he would leave but would return soon, and Phyllis in that case asked him not to keep the girl waiting too long. After these words, Kuju would return to the other world. Without a drop of doubt, he headed straight for the lion's den. He was greeted by the terrifying toys. Then Kuju realized he was in the right place, the hero in front of the demon lord's castle. At that moment, Jigjorg, sitting in the castle on his throne, sensed the presence of a visitor, which means that another reckless guy like Henry has been found. In that case, Gigyoj decided that he would have to treat the visitor with great respect and be extremely hospitable. A short while later, Kuju was already running down the corridor of the lord's castle and chopping down Jigjorg's demons. This was easy for Kuju, for the demons under Jigjorg's control are not that strong, and it didn't seem like Tima had been defeated by them. So did Tima really take such damage from a weak demon lord, or is there someone else besides him? That was something that Kuju didn't know yet. In any case, the guy only sensed Jigjorg's magic deep within the castle, therefore, the young man decided to speed up. After a while, Kuju finally reached Jigjorg's main lair, flying into it while standing on the demon. Raising his head, the young man saw Jigjorg himself sitting carelessly on his throne. Gigyoj clearly did not like the fact that Kuju had broken down his door. He thought such an act was not very polite to him. Kuju then asked whether Jigjorg had been taught not to invade other people's towns. Jigjorg, on the other hand, argued that the demon lord had no morals and should invade. That was his point. The overlord assured that everything he does must be messy. That is why he has no time for Kuja. So Jigjorg turned to his demons and asked one of them to entertain Kuja. When no one responded, Jigjorg was a little shocked. Kuju at this point said that the lord was alone, at least as far as he could see. In that case, Jigjorg decided to deal with Kuju himself since all his demons were useless. The lord was also interested in what Kuju even wanted. Kuju merely swung his sword and ordered Jigjorg to attack. Jigjorg, on the other hand, assured that he had already done so yesterday and he was in no mood today. But since Kuju was willing, the lord could not refuse him. So Jigjorg decided to play with Kuju. The first thing he did was to use the same attack he used against Grupa last night, Valdia Vervolas. Kuju recognized this magic circle and decided to deal with it quickly. And, when Gigyoj was already ready to attack Kuju, his magic circles didn't work. But Kuju, who blocked Jigjorg's attack, said that with the power that the Overlord had, he would not have defeated Group A. Therefore, Kuju was sure that Jigjorg was hiding something. In any case, the young man wanted the Overlord to reveal all his abilities sooner. After all, Kuju was still waiting at home. Gigyoj was beginning to like the situation. Then the Lord decided to attack Kuju using a different attack. But even with this attack, Kuju was easily dealt with. In the end, the young man remained alive and unharmed. Gigyoj observed that Kuju was a real funny guy and thought that this was his unique skill. Then Kuju asked Jigjorg how he knew about it. After all, only people in the academy know about unique skills. To which Jigjorg replied that it was because he was so clever. Whereupon the Lord decided to do Kuju a favor and kill him. At this point, Kuju felt that Jigjorg was getting stronger and stronger. In an instant, Gigyoj was illuminated with such a light that Kuju had to close his eyes. Within a second, the Lord appeared before Kuju in a new light. Then Kuju asked Jigjorg if this was really his real power. Jigjorg at this time was already sure that Kuju was frightened and said that it was only 70% of his strength. He then stated that it was too late to be afraid and Kuju already had one foot in the grave. Here Kuju understood everything. Then, without thinking long, the hero declared, "You are too weak." These words made Gigyoj stop, whereupon he asked Kuju to repeat what he had said. Kuju was not going to repeat anything, for the Lord had heard everything himself. He only decided to make it clear and said that Jigjorg was weak because he was only a fake. Here Gigyoj realized that Kuju was just mocking him, for all this time the young man had been treating the Lord as if he were nothing. Here the Lord's patience broke down. He had had enough of the game. Therefore, using the magic circles again, Jigjorg attacked Kuja. The Overlord's attack was powerful, so he was sure that Kuju was dead. Jigjorg assured that Kuju's magic would not work. The young man would simply die from that cursed sorcery. The Lord claimed that Kuju would die from the pain it would bring him. When Jigjorg's attack reached Kuju, the young man was illuminated with light. But when the smoke cleared, through the wreckage showed Kuju alive and well. For some reason this made Gigyoj laugh. Meanwhile, Kuju was about to attack him. Seeing the furious fellow approaching, Gigyoj was no longer able to laugh. Meanwhile, Kuju instantly stabbed the clown's nose with his sword. Gigyoj clutched his bloody nose and asked Kuju who he was and what he had done. Kuju, on the other hand, assured him that he had done nothing but had seen the trick a million times. Recalling his training with Fellis, the young man claimed that he had simply been a good student, so he had memorized the trick. Holding the bloody sword on his shoulder, Kuju assured that Gigyaj would get used to it. But Gigyaj still thought Kuju was just joking. Before Kuju could say what he wanted, Gigyaj called him a brat. After which the Overlord began to repeat only one thing: "I will kill you." With these words, the Overlord attacked Kuja, but before Gigyaj could even touch Kuju with his finger, his body was cut in two. Using his sword, Kuju pulled off this trick with such great speed that the Lord did not even blink an eye. When Gigyaj was crushed, Kuju dropped his sword and remembered that he had something to say to the Lord. He remembered Henry talking about how she wanted to tell the Overlord to screw you. So the young man decided to say it to Gigyaj for her. Turning round and looking at the crushed monster, Kuju said, "Fuck you, that's all there is to it." After these words, Kuju began to take his feet away. He realized that he had been careless, and if he had thought properly, he would have realized that there was only one being who could defeat the otherworldly hero and who was stronger than the Demon King. Kuju quickly ran back to the kingdom and only watered that all would be well there now. But Kuju's prayers were not answered. At this time, several soldiers that were guarding the castle were murdered in cold blood, and the murderer, standing in the shadows and looking at the corpses, only smiled. During the night, Emery suddenly woke up and realized she couldn't sleep anymore. The girl got out of bed and decided that she had to do something, even though she was patrolling Kuju today. So Emery quickly got dressed and started wandering around the castle. She tried to find Kuja, but she was having no luck. Suddenly, she came across Yuki, who was also walking along the corridor of the castle. Seeing this guy, the girl was amazed. She quickly ran up to Yuki with a questioning look. The girl wondered if the hero was alright. Yuki replied that he was fine, but Emery ran further away. She asked Yuki to wait for a while and said that she was going to wake up the doctor. Though Yuki tried to stop Emery, but it was too late. Looking round the corner, Emery stopped in a stupor. She couldn't believe her eyes, and Yuki started to approach her at the same time. Around the corner where Emery wanted to go, there were the corpses of the king's soldiers. At this time, Yuki, who was standing nearby, sighed heavily. This is when Emery realized everything. And Yuki, looking at Emery with his terrifying eyes, reminded her that he had asked her to wait and not to go round the corner. Emery was horrified. She was still hoping that it was some kind of mistake and Yuki wouldn't do that. This is when Yuki realized that Emery wasn't very smart and called her a typical weak hero. The one who killed all those soldiers lying around the corner. The one who cast the strengthening spell on the Demon Lord. And the one who defeated the team guys instead of the Demon Lord. It was all done by Yuki. Emery didn't understand anything. She thought that there must be a reason why Yuki did it. Yuki only laughed and said that every villain has a sad past behind him. However, the young man felt that it didn't matter anymore. He only began to deploy his magic to attack Emery. Air attack. Emery didn't have time to react and just froze in place. Yuki's attack only slightly grazed her cheek. The statue behind Emery's back suffered more damage. Half of its head fell off while Emery stood in horror. Yuki at this time asked the girl if she recognized this attack. Emery immediately remembered Kegoku, who used the air attack to crush the Demon Lord. So, it was time to recognize Yuki's unique ability, abduction skill. At this moment, Yuki showed his true face. He claimed that this ability took skills from the opponent, not just copying abilities. The young man claimed that it was difficult for him to master this ability. When he was first summoned, he was weak. While Yuki was steadily collecting demon abilities, the guys from the academy appeared. They killed the Demon King instead of Yuki. They also started treating the young man like rubbish, but Yuki thought a lot about it. After all, everyone in the academy has abilities, which means if Yuki takes away all the abilities, he will become an omnipotent person. Yuki assured that he didn't like that he had to kill people, but it was necessary to get the skill. On the other hand, Yuki just didn't care about Emery specifically. It would happen anyway. Because of that, right now, the young man was determined to take away Emery's non-skill. Then, without thinking long, the girl decided to stop Yuki. Using a magic circle, she drew her sword and declared that she was going to stop Yuki. Yuki, on the other hand, looked at Emery and then asked her not to make him laugh. Emery realized that Yuki was saying that because she was weak, but the girl did not despair. She pounced on Yuki to attack. Yuki at this time closed his hands with the words that weak mutts always bark loudly. After saying those words, the magical jaw that was next to Yuki pounced on Emery. The girl was scared and didn't know what to do. And when Yuki's jaw was about to eat her, a protective barrier appeared. Immediately after that, the ring on Emery's finger glowed. It was the same ring that Kujo had given her. Yuki looked at the girl's ring and didn't realize what it was. Was it the magic power of this ring? In the end, Yuki decided that Emery simply could not possess such a thing. Preparing for the next attack, he only stated that this ring would soon be his anyway. After saying that, Yuki attacked Emery again using an aerial attack. The attack was so strong that even with this ring armor, Emery continued to take damage. At this point, Yuki suggested Emery just surrender. He argued that someone without talent like Emery had no choice but to become fodder. Yuki assured that it was pointless and asked Emery to put down her sword and accept her fate. At that moment, a familiar voice was heard. No, it was Henry who attacked Yuki from behind, attacking with her sword. Yuki had time to react and quickly bounced away from Henry. Henry, on the other hand, struck the floor with her sword. From such a turn of events, Yuki even staggered on his feet. At this time, Emery, who was surprised by Henry's arrival, asked the girl what she was doing here. Henry, on the other hand, explained that she just couldn't sleep and decided to take a walk. The girl still didn't fully understand whether Yuki was really the enemy. Yuki was at this time needing his back. He recognized the local hero Henry and said that she was not invited here. But after thinking for a bit, Yuki decided that it would be convenient if Henry died to make it look like the Demon Lord had done it. In that case, Yuki decided that it was time to die. After saying that, he was about to attack again, but it was already two opponents. Henry, on the other hand, managed to repel Yuki's attacks and remained unharmed. Looking at how Henry created a vortex using a sword containing magic power to repel the attack, Emery was amazed. She realized that the girl didn't look confident, but Emery still had faith in her. At this time, Henry said that she was going to put down her sword one day, but Yuki then told her that her sword could save the country. So the girl wondered if those words were lies and how Yuki really thought. Then Yuki prepared for the next attack and only said that he just hates weakness. Looking at the magic that Yuki was using, Henry realized that it was simply unbelievable. The girl couldn't defend herself and took the blow, but she didn't give up. Even after such a powerful attack that Yuki used, the girl continued to attack. Yuki, meanwhile, attacked Henry again. Now Henry had no strength left for anything. She only flew back a few meters, dropping her sword and pouring blood. When Henry was already lying on the ground exhausted, Yuki admitted that he almost missed her attack. At that moment, Emery ran up to Henry and asked if she was alright. At that moment, Yuki asked Emery to let him tell her something. He stated that it was only a first-level spell. Those words caused Emery to be horrified. Yuki, on the other hand, liked Emery's face. He claimed that there were still 17 levels left and Emery needed to be a little patient. At this moment, Yuki felt a strange feeling associated with the Demon Lord. Without thinking long, he realized that the Demon Lord was dead. The young man didn't realize who could have done this. He was certain that there was no one in this world who could overpower the Demon Lord. Suddenly, Yuki realized that Kuju was not around. Emery, on the other hand, explained that Kuju was patrolling the streets. Yuki hesitated for a moment. In the end, he considered it unimportant. The young man decided that it wouldn't make a difference anymore, so it was time for Henry and Emery to die. After saying that, Yuki once again started attacking the girls with the magic called Tempest. After feeling the power of this magic, Emery realized that she had never seen anything like this before. So is there nothing she can do? The people around her have always protected Emery, and she can't do anything. So is Emery going to die now? At that moment, a cat's voice was heard behind Yuki's back. Meow. At that moment, Yuki's magic circle cracked. Before Yuki could attack Emery, his magic circle was destroyed by someone. Seeing how Yuki's magic simply disappeared, Emery was perplexed. Yuki turned around at that moment and asked the stranger who she was. At this moment, Phyllis decided to show her true face while simultaneously asking Yuki a question. Have you fallen so low? Look who you've turned into. In a matter of seconds, Phyllis transformed from a cat into a beautiful girl and declared that she had magic too. Seeing such a transformation, Emery was also dumbfounded. Yuki asked Phyllis again, who was she? After all, she had managed to interrupt the young man's magic. Phyllis turned to Emery at this time. She stated that she would detain Yuki, and Emery ordered her to take Henry and flee. Emery was in a stupor as well as Yuki and could not budge, and Phyllis decided not to hesitate. She attacked Yuki with inferno magic. In an instant, Yuki was engulfed in flames. In the end, the young man simply collapsed to his knees as he continued to blaze brightly. Emery looked at this magic and couldn't take her eyes away. Phyllis once again took the form of a cat and ordered Emery to run away quickly because they can't die here. Emery took Henry on her back and agreed with Phyllis. The girl then began to run away from the burning Yuki with the thought that she was protected again. After a while, Emery and Phyllis had already found a secluded corner. Emery supported the injured Henry as best she could. Phyllis in the meantime was treating Henry. Finally, Henry woke up. She covered her eyes with her hand from the realization that she had lost again. She realized that she couldn't defeat not just a demon lord, not even a single hero, despite her best efforts. Henry thought she was just pathetic, for she had been saved by the heroes again. The girl was flooding with tears and didn't realize what she was even doing all this time. At that moment, Emery took Henry's hand and called out. Putting the girl's hand to her forehead, Emery claimed that she would have been dead if Henry hadn't bought her time. Emery assured her that Henry had saved her and she was a true hero to her. Even Felis liked these words of Emery. Emery decided at that moment that it was her turn to fight. She took the ring that Kuju had given her off her finger and put it on Henry's finger. The girl then asked Henry and the cat to wait here. Henry looked at the shining ring on her hand but did not realize anything. At that moment, Felis sitting next to her asked Emery not to be a fool. The cat claimed that this ring was the favor of Febin, a sacred artifact that protects against all sorts of curses. Felis assured her that if Emery gave up this ring, she would be killed. Emery Dien claimed that everything was fine and she was not suicidal. The girl believed that someone would start an evacuation as there were still many people in the castle. Felis, on the other hand, said that she could take care of it and Emery would see to Henry's treatment. Emery reminded Felis that this was her last blow, because when she can't fight anymore. Besides, if a cat were to call for help, it was unlikely that anyone would listen. That was why Emery made the decision to go into battle. But Felis still asked Emery to just declare an evacuation and not even think of going to fight. Lastly, Emery had one more thing to say, addressing Felis. She asked the cat to speak like a normal person, as she had a very sweet voice. Felis, on the other hand, assured that she needed to hide. Emery, on the other hand, argued that from now on, Felis should not hide anything from her. Henry at this point also picked up on the fact that Felis was really cute. Felis was even a little embarrassed. Emery at this time went out the door with the thought that now she and Felis were even, because she had also hidden something from her. After a while, Emery managed to find Yuki. Yuki turned around and when he saw Emery, he confessed that he hadn't even noticed her. But the young man was even glad that the girl had come into his arms on her own. He claimed that he just wanted to eat all the heroes before he went to check out the Demon King's castle. Emery, on the other hand, claimed that she easily found Yuki as he kept releasing huge magical power. Yuki agreed with Emery. He admitted that that strange cat had burned him to the ground. It had been a long time since the young man had used so much regeneration magic. Because of that, Yuki wondered who was that cat. He even dared to guess that she was the one who killed the demon lord. That was why Yuki wanted to eat her. Because of that, the young man wondered where was that cat. But Emery was silent. Yuki thought Emery's silence was correctable. At that moment, Emery began to draw her sword. When the sword was in her hand, the girl declared that she would defeat Yuki herself. Yuki looked at Emery and then asked if she was an idiot. Yuki realized that Emery had been taught nothing at all by life. The girl had been helped that time, but now the lock was closed by Yuki's barrier and help would not come that way again. Yuki surmised that Emery thought that if she died so haplessly she would become a hero. But Emery argued that if there was even one chance in 1,000, she would stand to the end. She realized that help would not come. Even inside the castle, she is the only one who can fight now. But Emery has no choice. The girl knew that she had never been able to win a battle despite having plenty of opportunities. Thinking back to Henry, Emery realized that she and she were very similar. But there is still a difference. Henry is the real hero, and Emery only wants to be one. That is why she is now standing firmly on her feet in front of a strong opponent and is already about to attack him with the Great Awakening Lightning Discharge. Looking at the confident Emery, Yuki decided to test her words and persistence. So, the first thing Emery used against Yuki was 100,000 flowers, accumulation of power. This power puzzled Yuki a bit. It was comparable to the one he had just seen. But, suddenly, Emery once again fell to her knees exhausted. Yuki realized that Emery couldn't even control her abilities and thought that it wasn't funny anymore. Emery was just getting on his nerves. Because of that, the guy called her weak and asked her not to get in his way anymore. After saying that, Yuki kicked Emery in the stomach with all his might. The kick was so strong that Emery flew a long distance away and flew into the wall like a football. Yuki then walked up to the girl and grabbed her by the throat, after which he asked where the cat was. Yuki claimed that he had no time for a useless fool like Emery. But Emery was not going to say anything to the distraught Yuki. In that case, Yuki decided to make Emery want to tell him everything. After saying that, Yuki beat Emery with his fists. In the end, the girl was left lying on the ground with no strength. She was covered in abrasions and her sword was broken. Yuki, still standing nearby, called her weak and added that she also knew nothing. In the end, the young man felt that he was just wasting his time and it would be faster to lure the heroes out than to get them to talk. As he left, Yuki thought about killing a few people in the castle, because sooner or later they would come out. At this time, Emery looked at Yuki leaving and thought about how pathetic she was because she couldn't defeat that scoundrel. She felt sorry that she was still weak and couldn't change. Emery felt sorry that she couldn't stop thinking that it would be better if Yuki killed her. The girl realized that no matter what she did, she couldn't change. She can't beat anyone. And, in the end, she can't be a hero. But remembering Kuju's words, Emery cried. It's not what you can't do that matters, but what you definitely can do. That is what Kuju said to her on that bright day, holding out his hand. These words motivated Emery to fight on. She realized that she could not defeat Yuki now and could not become a hero, but she was still alive and she still had her magic. Then, picking up the rest of her sword from the ground, Emery decided that she could still do something. She once again used the magic of 100,000 colors, the accumulation of power. Yuki heard Emery's words and turned around. Emery at this moment was once again on her feet with new strength. Yuki realized that Emery was weak but stubborn. He even compared her to a worm. But Emery was thinking of something else. Kuju had said earlier that powerful helpers from the academy would come to their rescue. And if they are much stronger than Yuki, they will break through the defenses and come to the hero's rescue. Emery knew that it was a very small chance, but even so, she was going to do her best. She realized that right now she could hold out just a little bit to stop Yuki even if it took 1 second. In any case, if help didn't come, Emery would die. She understood that, so she decided to just be herself. After all this time, she was the one behind the backs of others. But the girl didn't want to end up like this. At least a little bit, but she wanted to be on par with all the heroes. Yuki at this time realized that Emery was going to use the same technique again. He realized that the girl would screw up again, but decided to still take her pitiful strength since she didn't want to die on her own. And, when Yuki already wanted to attack Emery again, she piled up all her strength for another attack. 100,000 flowers. This time, the attack was too powerful. Yuki quickly realized this. There was nothing left for him but to defend himself. He crossed his arms over his chest to stop Emery's attack. The attack was so strong that it took a tremendous amount of strength for Yuki to hold it back. Eventually, the young man managed to redirect the girl's attack upwards. It headed straight upwards and damaged Yuki's barrier. When the smoke cleared, Emery saw Yuki still on his feet. When Yuki looked at Emery, the girl simply fainted from lack of strength. In the end, Yuki just thought that everything was a waste of time, as Emery had just destroyed herself. Here Emery herself realized that her resistance, her dreams, her whole life, everything she had done was just meaningless. In that case, she just thanked all the guys close to her for everything. At that moment, Kuju came to the rescue. He broke through Yuki's barrier and attacked the villain from the air with words addressed to Emery. "You did a good job." Seeing and hearing Kuju, Yuki was confused, but the young man managed to rebound and dodge Kuju's attack. Yuki did not understand only one thing. Where did Kuju come from? Then he looked up and saw a large hole in his barrier. At this time, Kuju walked over to Emery and took her in his arms. He was glad that the girl was alive. The young man praised Emery, for she had bought him some time, and if she hadn't taken care of the defenses inside, they would have lost. That was why Kuju thought Emery was a real hero. He put her on the ground and created a barrier around her. Then Kuju decided to take care of the rest. When Kuju approached Yuki, Yuki realized that Kuju was the master of the cat and the one who had defeated the overlord. Kuju, on the other hand, was at this time more interested in what Yuki was going to do. This is when Yuki realized that all this time Kuju had just been hiding his power. This made him laugh. In that case, Yuki decided to just eat Kuju. Clasping his hands together again, Yuki declared that he was going to absorb the power of all the heroes. After saying that, there was an explosion. Yuki realized that Kuju's power was enough to successfully defeat the Demon Lord. That was why Yuki decided to show some respect and get serious. At this moment, Yuki used talent usurpation, a combination of strength. In this way, it was as if the young man had mutated. Kuju realized that Yuki was now mixing the various powers he had been fed so far. It was a form that was maximizing its abilities. Yuki at this moment reiterated that he was going to eat everyone, including Kuju and Emery. Also, Yuki didn't forget about Felis and said that he was going to eat her too. The words about Felis made Kuju tense up. Unfortunately, any parasite that tries to harm his friends, Kuju prefers to get rid of. So now he said about pulling out his Lavinkin sword. Finally, Kuju was ready to show Yuki the difference between a pathetic and cowardly thief and a man who had trained for a long time. Before the fight started, Kuju asked Yuki only one thing. Was he willing to surrender? Yuki pretended to ponder the proposal, but in the end, the young man said he wouldn't surrender and called Kuju an idiot. Yuki then used the wind formation magic called Retribution Ceremony. At that moment, Kuju noticed the wind gathering around Yuki. Yuki at this time declared that he would tear Kuju to pieces before he had time to think about it. After saying these words, Yuki pounced on Kuju. Kuju noticed that the young man was about to attack him with his hand. Kuju also saw that Yuki was merging with the wind, high-speed traveling and nullifying all attacks. This is Kegoku's unique ability. Is it really the last form? But whatever form it was, Kuju grabbed Yuki's hand and squeezed it tightly. Yuki didn't understand how Kuju had held him back. His body was now assimilated with the wind. To which Kuju replied that he was just training himself to be able to hold something like this. After saying this, Yuki asked Kuju to get off his back. In such a case, Kuju could not refuse his opponent. With a swing of his sword, he cut off Yuki's arm. After this action, there was a loud scream from Yuki. He plopped down on the ground and was writhing in pain. He then looked at Kuju, who had just thrown away Yuki's severed arm, and asked, "What the hell?" It seemed to Yuki that Kuju was just messing with him. But Kuju tried to explain to Yuki that in front of him is a guy who was going to kill his friends. In front of him is a guy who is going to attack his cat. Because of that, Kuju thought this situation was not one in which he would be laughed at as with a demon lord. So Kuju's conditions are quite simple. So, all Kuju wanted was for Yuki not to be a fool and give up, otherwise he would regret. In that case, Yuki let Kuju do what he wanted. He was not going to give up but was determined to show Kuju what he could do. After saying that, Yuki rose to his feet and used a magic called Greed Swarm. In a couple of moments, Yuki's lost arm was replaced with a new one. At first, Kuju thought it was a regeneration ability while looking at this picture, but then the young man realized that Yuki was simply creating a new body. And Kuju was right. This is Yuki's unique ability that feeds on life. Yuki absorbed a huge number of lives. They will be kept with him for the rest of his life. Thus, the young man can create as many new bodies as he wants. And the stock that Yuki created is 1-835-000-000-000-000-000 bodies. Therefore, Yuki considered himself immortal. He didn't care how hard Kuju trained, because no matter how many scratches Kuju inflicted on him, Kuju would still have to die first. That was why Yuki was confident that a lowly idiot like Kuju couldn't beat him. At this moment, Kuju looked up at the sky and realized that he had missed it. There was a time when Kuju was constantly teaming up with demons. It seemed like it was 10,000 years ago. Listening to Kuju's words, Yuki didn't understand what he was talking about. Kuju, on the other hand, said that he didn't count how many demons there were in the end. Yes, and there was no need for that. After all, 2 trillion would be good training for Kuju. After saying that, Yuki thought Kuju was incompetent and asked him not to try to bluff. He then pounced on the guy, but he did not attack Kuju, but flew past. After that, Yuki created a spiritual abyss. He planned to attack Kuju from a blind spot in this protective wall. But no sooner had the young man realized his plans than Kuju cut him and his wall in half. Yuki was horrified at the realization of what had just happened. Meanwhile, Kuju swung his sword to attack Yuki again. When Kuju thrust his sword into his opponent's chest, Yuki tried to attack Kuju back. Using the demon strike, Yuki wanted to strike Kuju, but Kuju managed to bounce back and remain unharmed. Then Yuki decided to add something else, exhaustion of the flame karma puppet. From such a powerful spell, there was a large explosion, and as the smoke cleared, Kuju showed himself once again. He assured that Yuki was very talented, not like him. Because of this, Kuju respects Yuki. That is why he will show Yuki his true strength. At that moment, Yuki was really scared. When Kuju swooped down on him and started carving patterns on his body with his sword, Yuki didn't realize one thing. Who was Kuju anyway? After a while, Yuki was lying on the ground and could not move. There was only one thing he didn't realize. How did Kuju remain unharmed after being hit so many times? Yuki was sure that Kuju wasn't just some hero. That was why he wondered what unique abilities Kuju possessed. Kuju answered that question. He said that he had no unique abilities, none existed. Kuju assured that this sword that he held in his hand was the answer to Yuki's question. But even this sword has not yet revealed its power, so for now it is just a sword. Kuju assured that he had told everyone many times that it was all about the sword, although Yuki had called Kuju incompetent at all. But Yuki didn't believe Kuju's words. He thought that the young man was just joking. Kuju, on the other hand, at that moment unbuttoned and took off his cloak, saying that he was being completely serious. He also decided to finally raise the stakes as Yuki wanted. Now Kuju would become even more serious. At this point, Yuki was already scared to death. He didn't understand what kind of world Kuju had trained in that he had achieved such incredible power. But Kuju felt that he didn't have to answer that question and tell everything to Yuki. Right now, he only remembered those beautiful days spent together with Felis. At this moment, Yuki desperately cried out that there was nothing Kuju could do to him, because he still had 1 trillion to spare. Kuju knew that, but the young man also knew that this trillion was all Yuki had, which meant that Yuki had hit rock bottom. In that case, Kuju decided to end it all. He even allowed Yuki to eat him, an ancient evil. At that moment, Yuki looked at Kuju and didn't realize what kind of magic he was using. The young man realized that he had felt it before, but such a scale he had never even imagined. With each passing second, Kuju's magic was getting stronger and stronger, and Yuki was already ready to beg for mercy at this time. Finally, Kuju showed Yuki his true power, the old fruit of chaos. This is the story of Yuki Shinto. Everyone, including Yuki, has their own story of how they came to the path of a hero. When Yuki was called to the other world, he saw a stare full of expectation and respect. The people of this world welcomed Yuki, a coward and a weakling. They supported him no matter what he did. Yuki hunted a weak monster, and they exalted him. Back then, the young boy was the main character. It was his own world. In it, one girl even fried Yuki a toy that looked like him. In the real world, no one even looked at Yuki. Here, however, everyone clung to him like a hero. Then Yuki realized that this was where he needed to be forever. At least Yuki thought so until the other heroes came. When the unfamiliar heroes burst into Yuki's world and announced that they had completely exterminated the Demon Lord and his servants, everything turned upside down. The heroes then assured that defeating the Demon Lord was always only a matter of time. After such a boisterous declaration, all the inhabitants of Yuki's world began to praise the arriving heroes. They ran with the heroes and did not notice Yuki being pushed at all. Then his toy, given by a girl, fell out of Yuki's hands. But no one cared about that now. Yuki's toy was only being trampled on. People started talking to the heroes, and the girls were ready to jump on their necks. At that moment, only Yuki was standing aside. When no one was around, Yuki picked up his toy, which he had accidentally dropped. It was in a terrible state, for it had been trampled on by a bunch of people. The cotton was sticking out of almost every crevice. Looking up, Yuki saw the hero hugging the very girl who had given him this toy. From that day on, Yuki stopped being a hero, and that was when he stopped striving for that title. In the first place, what did Yuki want to gain great power for? Let's return to the present. When the old chaos fruit belonging to Kuju looked directly at Yuki, Yuki was madly frightened and didn't even realize what kind of power was in front of him. Kuju pointed his blade at Yuki at that moment and allowed the old chaos fruit to take a small bite. Immediately after these words, there was a loud startled scream from Yuki. After the attack, Yuki found himself in some dark place. He didn't understand anything as he suddenly heard someone's voices. Turning around, Yuki saw a crowd of people. It was as if they were looking at Yuki and repeating, "It's the hero, the hero." Yuki was confused. It seemed to him as if these people had come after him. When the people rushed towards Yuki, the young man ran towards them in joy. But they were not running toward Yuki. The people only ran past, pushing and knocking Yuki down as if he were not there. There were so many people that at one point Yuki just got lost in the crowd. When it was over, Yuki was lying on the ground, unable to move. Meanwhile, the people appeared to be running to the other heroes. Looking at this picture, Yuki almost cried. There were many of his copies around him. Trying to reach his bloody hand to the heroes, Yuki did not understand why this happened. After all, people were on his side. Yuki had absolutely nothing. He was left alone. Eventually, the exhausted arm fell down and tears appeared in his eyes. There were many souls around Yuki. It was the trillion he had told Kuju about, but they were all dead. Finally, Yuki returned to the real world. He didn't understand what had just happened to him, but the young man knew that of all his bodies, none of them remained. At that moment, Kuju's voice was heard. He asked Yuki how he was feeling. Yuki was startled to see Kuju again. He immediately asked him to stop. Yuki assured that he had nothing else, and if Kuju killed him again, he would die. Yuki still didn't realize whether it was a joke or not. He didn't believe that Kuju just had monstrous strength. Yuki assured that Kuju couldn't even imagine how hard he was trying. At that moment, Kuju approached Yuki and drove his sword into the ground right next to the frightened boy. Kuju then asked what was Yuki trying for. Yuki claimed that it was obvious and he was trying to get stronger. Kuju then asked again for what. The guy thought that if he was strong, everyone would start to envy him and no one would laugh anymore, even those guys from the academy. Then Kuju asked again, for the sake of what? Yuki replied that he was just giving back what was taken from him. The guy claimed his world, a story taken away from him. Yuki only kept saying that his place was taken away from him in this world, and it was all the fault of all the heroes and their powers. Yuki felt that people should have exalted him, but he didn't understand why things had turned out this way. Suddenly, Yuki remembered the moment when the girl gave him a toy. She had wanted to call him a hero then, but changed her mind and called him by his name. After which, with a sincere smile on her face, the girl thanked Yuki. Remembering this moment, Yuki cried. How could he have forgotten this at the beginning? That's when Yuki started to train. He killed monsters, helped people, and read a lot. Kuju was able to see Yuki's whole story. He pulled his blade out of the ground and decided to just leave. Yuki, however, seeing that Kuju was about to leave, asked where he was going. Yuki claimed that he was the enemy of the heroes and it was the heroes' job to defeat him. But Kuju had already reached Imari at this time. He said that Yuki was not fit to be an enemy now. Besides, Kuju didn't care about being a hero. He just wanted to protect what was important to him. With those words, Kuju lifted Imari in his arms. Lastly, Kuju said whether he was a fallen hero. Yuki at this moment lowered his head and looked at his mark on his hand. After which, Yuki's tears began to drip onto his hand. Eventually, Kuju left and Yuki was left kneeling and sobbing. At this moment, the heroes from Grupo woke up after a long sleep. They did not realize where they were. Only Yuki was not among them. On his bed was only a toy given to him long ago by a little girl. A few hours later, the entire kingdom was celebrating the victory over the Demon Lord. Now the people could not be afraid of the demons. They cried with happiness. The people could never have imagined that this day would come. Grupo was among those celebrating. Imari sat next to Kuju and was surprised at how many people were on the streets of the kingdom. In that case, the girl felt that Henry should also come. Kuju, on the other hand, was more inclined to think that the local heroes were busy doing all sorts of things. Lala at this time was eating as usual, forgetting to share with Fellis. Kuju, on the other hand, asked Lala and Fellis not to get too carried away, but it was already too late. Lala spit on the cutlery and started eating the meat without it. Emery, looking at the hungry Fellis, suggested that the cat take her portion. The girl felt that she wouldn't have any problems with the academy now. At this moment, Kuju quietly sipped his beer and thought about when his girlfriends got used to the fact that Fellis could talk. And after all, Kuju had tried so hard to hide it from everyone. At that moment, Emery looked at Kuju and suggested that they keep what happened yesterday between them. Kuju agreed. After that battle, Yuki was successfully neutralized. All the members of Team woke up safely and then Yuki surrendered to them. Kuju didn't know what Yuki was thinking when he admitted his guilt. Yuki seems to have kept his mouth shut since he turned himself in, including about Kuju and Fellis. The only thing Kuju knows is that Yuki has a long road of redemption ahead of him. Suddenly, Emery asked Kuju how he managed to fight off such a strong opponent like Yuki. The girl didn't see the battle itself because she was unconscious. Kuju didn't even know what to answer. He couldn't dedicate Emery and say that he was insanely strong. Then Kuju said that it was all because of her. Kuju claimed that Emery's attack was fatal to Yuki and that was the reason they won. Kuju assured that Emery acted like a true hero despite being scared and fainted. That was why Kuju believed that Emery had won against all odds. These words made Emery very embarrassed. They ended up celebrating the victory together by banging their beer mugs together. Fellis, suddenly, wondered if Kuju had told the truth or had sweetly lied. Kuju, on the other hand, claimed that thanks to Emery, he had made it in time. Henry had saved Emery, and Fellis had saved them both. Emery in turn detained Yuki. At this point, Lala stepped in and claimed that she had done her best too. The girl claimed that she woke up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and found the soldiers lying down. Lala called for help to carry them to the infirmary. Then the boys all amicably realized that if any of them did not play their part, they would lose. In that case, it was a clear victory for Team B. At that moment, Henry appeared from around the corner. She only watched Team B, but did not dare to approach. Finally, it was time to return to their world. When Group B arrived at the departure point, a disgruntled Kegoku claimed they were late and asked them to observe the 15-minute interval. Kegoku argued that the contingency that had happened did not mean that it was okay for Group B to be late. Hearing Kegoku's grumbling, Kuju tiredly held his head. At this moment, Emery was worried that Henry wanted to say goodbye, but they hadn't seen her yet. That was the moment when Henry appeared. Seeing her, a joyful Emery quickly ran up to Henry. Kuju at this time asked Kyogoku if they could talk to Henry. The guy was prepared in the fact that Kegoku would be against it. But Kegoku only asked him to tell him once they finished saying goodbye. Kuju was very surprised that Kegoku didn't object. At this time, Henry, standing in the hood, said that she wanted to thank the heroes for their help and say goodbye. Emery didn't like the fact that Emery was standing in the hood because she couldn't see the girl's face. Henry, on the other hand, just pulled the hood tighter and said it was okay. But Lala, Fellis, and Emery had other plans. They wanted to look Henry in the eyes when they said goodbye. Therefore, the three pounced furiously on Henry to remove her hood. Finally, the hood came off Henry's head. The girls saw tears in Henry's eyes. This greatly astonished them. Angry Henry, on the other hand, asked the heroes to be quiet and not to laugh at her. The girl claimed that she is not a crybaby and even heroes can cry sometimes. Emery was dumbfounded as she didn't say a word. Henry, wiping away her tears, explained that she wanted to see the boys off like a hero. But Emery thought Henry was already a hero. The girl claimed that she really considered Henry a hero because she had saved her. Also, Emery was sure that to the people of the country, Henry also remains a hero. Henry, on the other hand, said that she could say the same thing to Emery. For all the people who were in the same situation as Henry, Emery proved that they could be strong, proved that they could change. That is why Henry had the courage to call Emery her hero. After saying those sweet words, Henry threw herself into Emery's arms. Hugging the girl, Henry claimed that she owed them all, including Lala, Fellis, and Kuja. Overflowing with tears, Henry thanked her new hero friends sincerely and from the bottom of her heart. Fellis decided to make a farewell speech as well. She turned to Henry and asked her to be careful, because just because she defeated the Demon Lord does not mean that the next one will not be able to appear. Henry knew that herself, but she claimed that this time she would devote herself to this world wholeheartedly. On that day, Henry firmly decided that she would keep her sword for the rest of her life. This attitude was very much appreciated by the boys in B11. Finally, it was time to say goodbye for good. Holding Fellis in her arms, Kuju asked her if she had enjoyed the adventure. After all, it had been quite interesting. Now Kuju could use this gate to get to other interesting worlds. But Fellis wanted to dwell in the academy where all the heroes gathered for now. Of course, as a demon lord, she also saw her own advantages and interesting points. However, the time spent with the guys, Phyllis thought it was not so boring. Therefore, she asked Kuju what he thought about it. Kuju looked up at the sky and thought about it, replaying all the happy moments again. Eventually, the guy said that the place they were going to was his jam. In that case, Phyllis realized that they were returning as part of Lala's team. Wherever Kuju goes, Phyllis will follow him. If he wants to stay there, so will she. Phyllis will get rid of anything that will interfere with their journey. That's all she wants at this point. When the heroes returned, they all went to their rooms. Freyfisia, on the other hand, was walking down the corridor and grumbling, blaming Yuki. The girl was nervously biting her nails and claimed that it was all Yuki's fault. At that moment, another goddess named Rose, who was playing the game, noticed that Freyfisia was very upset about something. Rose surmised that Freyfisia's dog had bitten her on the arm, and that is the most shameful thing in the world for a goddess. Freyfisia, on the other hand, claimed that Yuki was a hero summoned by another goddess. Therefore, Freyfisia did not fully understand his power. At that moment, Rose, who was playing the game, won. She put the game aside and said that when Freyfisia starts making excuses like that, it was a sign that she was not prepared for the consequences. Rose assured that it's like a game. Even if you use cheats, you still won't find the strength to win, so you have to be prepared for it. Rosa argued that if Freyfisia can't control her wards, then it's not as much fun. The game can't be fun without winning. After saying that, Rosa reminded that a new game would start soon. She then suggested that Freyfisia should participate in it as revenge. Freyfisia clarified whether Rosa was talking about a group complex quasi-martial exercise, and Freyfisia was right. The group complex quasi-martial exercise is a squad tournament for the strongest in the academy. Rosa liked this game, so she was looking forward to it. She wondered whose hero was the strongest, but Freyfisia knew that Rosa definitely had a favorite to win. The only squad whose members all have S rank. The strongest squad in the academy, also known as the Children of the Rose. That's why Rose couldn't wait for the day the games would start. Sometime after their return, B11 and the rest of the academy students arrived at the virtual area of the academy called City. Looking at this creation, the boys could not believe that they were still in the academy. When it started, Maou greeted the students. The girl explained that today they would be receiving training in the city. It was a pseudo-city created by the academy in subspace, specially prepared for the students. In this city, the apprentices will shop and have fun, but the shops and services here are the same as in real life. The goal is not to let the disciples go out into the city with ordinary people so that they won't be bored. Today's event is about the first 6 months of the newcomers' first 6 months in the academy. They can go out and party all evening. Maou assured that the academy wouldn't ask for any money, so the students could just enjoy themselves. Of course, such an event caused a storm of emotions among the students. Emery and Lala were especially excited about it. Lala wanted to have a snack first, but Emery suggested that they go somewhere to play first. That was why the girls were tearing Kuja in two. Kuju, on the other hand, considered this place as a place where horny people like dogs could fight for entertainment. Therefore, the guy was sure that there must be some reason here. In the end, Emery suggested that the guys go to the cafe. Looking at that fancy cafe, Emery was drooling. Kuju, on the other hand, asked Phyllis if she was satisfied, to which Phyllis replied that she would be willing to eat everything except the sweets. Lala at this time said that she was also fine with it, as long as it was tasty and hearty. In that case, the boys went to this cafe. At the checkout, they were greeted by a robotic girl. She asked how she could help a cat and 3 people. Kuju looked at the menu and wondered. The letters seemed a little strange to him. Eventually, he started to order. First, Kuju ordered a small caramel macchiato. At this time, Emery and Phyllis looked at the miserable Kuju and realized that he didn't frequent the cafe. When Kuju placed his order, the girl robotically asked him to pay. Kuju was a little stunned. The girl, on the other hand, asked him to touch the displayed sign with his hand. Kuju did not understand anything, for Maou claimed that they did not need money. When he touched the sign with his hand, the payment did not go through, for Kuju's balance was insufficient. This is when Kuju realized that the payment needed to be made with SP. The academy decided to replace the money with SP, but Emery, who had already approached Kuju, didn't understand why Kuju's balance was so low. After all, they had completed the task by defeating the Demon Lord. Kuju, on the other hand, claimed that it was because the initial deficit was too high. At this point, Emery indignantly asked why they were in a deficit. Kuju, on the other hand, argued that it was all because of her. At that moment, the guy realized that there was something more behind this whole performance. At that moment, the girl robot at the checkout counter pointed out to Kuju the large disgruntled queue behind him. The girl said she would have to ask Kuju to leave if he couldn't pay for his order. After a while, the students of the academy were having fun, trying on outfits, playing games and enjoying the hedgehog. Group B11 was sitting on a bench at this time. Emery realized that they were under the weather and would certainly not leave here, and Kuju was puzzled that they couldn't even buy coffee. Lala was also very hungry. At that moment she grabbed Felis so that the cat screamed. Lala, on the other hand, claimed that she couldn't take it anymore. Opening her mouth wide, Lala apologized to Felis, preparing to bite her. At that moment, a hungry Lala had someone put a donut in her mouth. It turned out to be a girl who was a student of the academy just like the others. Lala, sitting with the donut in her mouth, thanked the girl, and Kuju, looking at the stranger, wondered who she was. But as it turned out, Emery knew the girl. Her name was Kane. Kane also recognized Emery and picked up on how they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Then Emery ran up to Kane and said that she was glad to see that the girl was doing well, after which she apologized and decided to introduce Kuja to Kana. So this girl's full name is Kanon Hanabishi. She and Emery have been friends for a long time and were together when they entered the other world. Kuju on the other hand wondered, since he hadn't seen this girl at the academy. Kane explained that the students who received a grade of A or higher on the Dream on Ability results at the time of admission were in a different building. Emery at this point also picked up on the fact that Kane was very strong. The girl assured that Kane was the best in the class she transferred to. Kane, on the other hand, assured that she was not the best at all, for they were the most noble, graceful, and strongest there. After saying that, the girl snapped her fingers, after which a majestic unicorn appeared in front of the guys. As it turned out, it was not just an animal, but also Kane's partner named Carrot. At this moment, Felis realized and spoke aloud about Kane being a spirit user and also a born goddess. After listening to Felis's words, Kuju realized that it wasn't just chatter. At this moment, Kane was stroking her partner and suddenly turned to Emery. The girl wanted Emery to introduce her friends to her. Kane especially pointed to Kuja. Then Emery introduced Kuja and said that he was her master. Hearing the words about the master, Kane was confused and asked Emery if she was sure. As it turned out, Kane was the one who protected Emery and taught her how to fight in this world. Thus, Kane is literally Emery's former mentor. Because of that, Kane doubted that Kuju was really the one who could take her place. The girl approached Kuju and, pointing her finger at him, asked if he was a worthy companion for Emery. Kuju, on the other hand, assured that he was only a humble hero compared to Kane. But Kane argued that this was not the case. She was talking about Kuju's heart. The girl assured that Emery was always in the midst of danger and she needed worthy men who would be true knights for her. Kuju didn't remember being a knight, but the day he had defeated Yuki, he had taken care of Emery. Suddenly, Kuju grabbed Kane's hand and said that he knew how much she cared for Emery, so she shouldn't worry. Kane, looking at Kuju's face, didn't understand what that meant. At this time, Kuju let go of Kane's hand and apologized for grabbing her. Kane, on the other hand, turned away and started to walk away. She explained that her friends were waiting for her. Lastly, Kane turned to Emery. If you have a bad experience with this group, tell me immediately. Emery, on the other hand, thought that Kane was worrying about her too much. Kane then turned to Kuju and ordered him to be a knight for Emery. Lastly, Kane asked the boys to get ready for the Tozen that would soon begin. As she left, Kane thought about Kuju, who had become a great mage only for a moment, but immediately returned to the power of F-rank magic. Kane didn't realize whether it was a coincidence or not. Or maybe she was just mistaken. At this time, Kuju was only thinking about what was Tozen. After a while, Minao gathered the students for a class. She explained that Tozen was a group comprehensive combat simulation exercise, an intra-group competition in which all members of the group are forced to participate. In general, it is something like an extreme sports festival. If the students can show their abilities in this competition, they may be taken to scout for a high-ranking squad, or offered to be part of the executive committee. Minao assured that the opportunity that would directly affect the students' future lives. The girl also added that the students will get a lot of SP if they perform well. The academy attaches great importance to this event. Minao was sure that some of the students couldn't have a proper fun in the city, so she wished everyone good luck in Tozen. Tozen is divided into 3 stages. The detailed rules for each stage will be explained when the students move on. Also, Minao added that everything will be allowed in Tozen. That is, students will be able to use their unique abilities without restrictions. Anything they can think of. The main purpose of this tournament is to evaluate the student's ability to use all kinds of means. In other words, killing is not forbidden in Tozen. Whatever happens, Tozen will treat it as an accident. So if someone feels they are in danger, they should not hesitate to leave. Of course, if they have time to do so. That was the end of Minao's briefing. Lastly, she said that Tozen wouldn't start until a month later, so the disciples would need to train to avoid getting killed. At that moment, Rose appeared from nowhere. She was prompted to come here by the words about Tozen. At that moment, Kuju recognized Rose. He knew that she was one of the founders of the academy. Felis also recognized Rosa. She knew that Rosa was the goddess of guile and deceit. As it turned out, Felis had seen Rosa once. Rosa can change her appearance at will. She looks completely different now than she did when she met Felis. It's amazing that Rosa can change her appearance so much at will. At this point, Rosa warned that she was the kind of person who was looking forward to the tournament. The goddess assured that she couldn't resist looking at the leaked information. That was why Rosa wanted to start the tournament from tomorrow. At that moment, it was as if the students had entered a casino. While all the students were dumbfounded by this statement from Rosa, Maou said that Rosa couldn't do that because the executive committee was very busy right now. But Rosa claimed that everything was fine. She didn't like Maou interjecting everything, so she decided to start and cast lots. When the machine started, all the students tensed up a lot. In the end, Group B11 fell out, and Rosa announced that the lucky winners of the first day of the tournament would be Lala's team. This turn of events shocked the heroes. So here it is, the day of the tournament. As with any tournament, there was a host. He started by explaining the rules for all spectators and participants. There will now be a battle for the Phase 1 flag. The time limit is 30 minutes. The team that first captures the opponent's flag from both sides wins. To make a long story short, the presenter called the participants idiots and asked them to just capture the flag. Now it is time to introduce the players of the first round. Lala's squad team, Fallen Heroes of F rank. At this time, Emery was excited and asked Kolju to take a look at the picture they were being shown. Kuju, on the other hand, didn't like this setting at all. He realized that they were drawn to the most high-profile first match, but Kuju didn't want to stand out. At this time, Lala and Felis were sitting in the stands cheering for Kuju and Emery. Finally, the opponents of Group B11 entered the battlefield. They were the fourth most talented B-ranked squad. Rumor has it that they were unofficially promoted to a rank this semester. Ariadne's goddess team. Kuju looked at his opponents and became even more frustrated. He didn't expect that they would be facing highly ranked guys from their first match. Kuju realized that it would be hard to get through with all these people watching. In the end, the guy decided that there was no point in him giving his best. He only wanted to act like he was losing. At this moment, Kuju was approached by Felis via telepathy. She claimed that she didn't want to see the hero she had put all her heart into be defeated in front of everyone. In that case, Kuju decided to fight in earnest. At that moment, the announcer started the countdown. While the countdown was going on, Kuju continued to ponder. He thought about the fact that his team was outnumbered and if he really wanted to win, he would capture the enemy's flag as soon as possible. But Kuju realized that this might lead to everyone finding out who he was. That's why Kuju decided to come up with a plan. The first thing he did was explain to Emery that he would be in charge of protecting the flag. Kuju assured that the enemy team had twice as many men, so they would try to overpower in numbers and go on the offensive. That was why Emery would have to focus on capturing the flag. Emery understood everything and prepared for battle. She was already enjoying this battle since it would be the first time she and Kuju would be working together. At that moment, the countdown reached 0 and the battle for the flag began. Suddenly, the referee announced that the first round was over. Kuju was in a stupor. When he turned around, he didn't see his flag. The opposing team already had the flag. But how? So, it's Ariadne Natsu's leader skill called Phase Shift. So the guy just swapped the space around and took the flag. The match was over in just 1 second. At this point, the disgruntled students from the stand started to get indignant. They didn't like that Kuju and Emery weren't even trying and thought that this couldn't even be called a match. And while the confused Kuju was trying to realize what had happened, Emery flew with all her legs towards her opponents. The girl didn't know yet that they had lost the first round. This was where Kuju realized everything. The opponents were using cheats. In the second round, the opponents hypnotized Emery, who eventually gave up and left. In the third round, Kuju and Emery teleported outside the ring and lost by time. In the fourth round, the guys lost when the flag was stolen by a spatial time tunnel. Thus, Kuju and Emery did not win once. Towards the end of the day, Kuju was already giving Felis a massage in her room. In the process, they were discussing today's tournament. Kuju didn't understand what kind of abilities the opponents were using and thought it was unfair. Felis in that case suggested that Kuju should show himself in all his glory, but Kuju argued that he could not do so. The young man felt that he should fight in such a way that he would not be noticed. At that moment, Felis turned to face Kuju and took him by the neck. She realized that Kuju was having a hard time in this tournament, but the girl assured that the young man must win. Otherwise, she would make him have another massage. This embarrassed Kuju so much that he fell to his knees and clutched his chest. Felis, on the other hand, laughed at this. She knew that Kuju was not used to such things even after 30,000 years. But the girl assured that if Kuju didn't win soon, he would have to endure this rapid heartbeat and labored breathing for several hours every day. Kuju realized that it would just go on forever. Next time, the first round will consist of 5 matches and Kuju will get as many points as they need. It would be enough to win the last round. At that moment, the door to the room was ajar. It was Emery. She wanted to say something at first, but she saw Felis hugging Kuju and froze. Being in such a situation, Kuju was also very embarrassed. Emery at that moment pointed a trembling finger at Kuju and Felis. Pouring sweat, Emery said strange things. The intertwined man and woman. A faint blush spread across their cheeks, the setting sun illuminating their sweaty skin. After a while, Kuju did explain to Emery that he was just giving Felis a massage. Emery, on the other hand, thought that because of the defeat, Kuju would hibernate like a bear. But Kuju thought it had nothing to do with him at all. While getting dressed, Kuju asked what about the final match. Emery told him that the opponent for the final match had already been determined, and it seems to be a team called Hashinami no Yakata. Hearing the name, Kuju assumed that these guys would be ranked again. But Emery assured that this team has the same F rank as them. The girl claimed that they were a team with a unique ability that specialized in analysis and evaluation, so they weren't very good in battle. In that case, Kuju decided that they would definitely win next time. Kuju realized that he had to end the days of Felis playing them. At this moment, Felis, who was still in the form of a girl, asked if all this meant that her days of massage would end. After which the girl hugged Kuju from the back and said that she enjoyed watching her favorite man burn with shame. At this point, Emery started to have a fit again. She started talking about man and woman intertwined again. This is when Kuju realized that they must surely win. 2 days later in the early morning, Kuju decided to practice. He realized that he had come too early, so he expected to have the morning training alone. Suddenly, Maou appeared in Kuju's path. She greeted Kuju and asked how he was doing. Kuju thought that Maou knew how he was doing since he was losing all his fights. Maou laughed and said that in that case Kuju could not lose this last match. Whereupon the girl asked the young man if he had a secret plan. Kuju was puzzled and asked Maou what she was talking about. The girl, on the other hand, found Kuju's behavior strange. She had expected a different reaction from him. In the end, Maou wished Kuju good luck and finally confessed that she was his fan. Kuju did not understand anything from this conversation. After a while, the stands were once again filled with students and the announcer was already shouting into the microphone. The final match of the season is about to begin. It's a battle of the flags between the F-ranked teams. So, Hashinami no Yakata versus Lala's team. Kuju, standing on the battlefield, looked around and realized that there weren't many spectators. After all, this is a battle between two unsuccessful teams. At that moment, Lala's team was approached by the opposing team. The hooded guy offered to do their best since both teams were on the verge of defeat. Kuju pretended to be serious and even promised to try his best. Emery, on the other hand, was indeed serious. At this moment, when the opponents took out some pills from their pockets. Then, without thinking long, the opponents swallowed the pills, which dumbfounded Kuju and Emery. After a moment, Kuju felt a strong magic. The opponents at this time removed their hoods and prepared to fight. So had they taken some kind of doping. Without thinking long, the opponents started attacking Kuju and Emery. The first attack was from a guy, Roaring Fangs of the Wind God. This attack was aimed directly at Emery. It was so fast and unexpected that Emery just froze in her reverie and didn't know what to do. At this moment, Lala and Kane, who were watching Irie from the stands, were greatly startled. Kuju had time to react and covered Emery with his back. Emery at that moment asked Kuju what was wrong with their opponents. But Kuju himself didn't know that, and who said that watching an F-rank battle would be boring. Kuju thought this whole situation was very strange. Now their opponents weren't even close to F-rank. What were they thinking? At this moment, the girl from Team Hashinami no attacked the opponents with the sealing hand of the ice statue. Kuju at that moment immediately placed Emery in a protective barrier so that the girl wouldn't get hurt. It was difficult for the guy to defend himself and protect Emery, but he couldn't help it. After all, he must hide his abilities. At this moment, the opposing team was already sure that with their immense strength, they would definitely win and there was no equal. At this moment, Kuju noticed that the opponents were using more magic than they could. At this rate, their bodies simply wouldn't be able to withstand it. Don't they realize that? Have these weaklings decided to go beyond their limits? Kuju realized that if he put in his best effort, he could defeat these guys. But if the guy used too much magic, they would find out who he really was. Kuju realized that it would be unnatural if he suddenly took the flag and won from such a low position. In that case, Kuju decided to do a distraction for now. With all his might, he simply slammed his fist on the ground to raise dust. The disciples in the stands saw nothing and understood nothing as well as Kuju's opponents. At that moment, one of them saw Emery who was trying to find Kuju. Without thinking long, the guy was about to attack the girl. Mentally, he asked not to take it to heart, after all, it was all Raj ISP. But Kuju didn't let this guy attack Emery. He grabbed his opponent by the scruff of the neck and ordered him to extend his arm forward to receive his winnings. The opponent had nothing to do but obey Kuju. When the guy stretched his arm forward, Kuju easily threw him somewhere to the side. As it turned out, Kuju directed the opponent straight towards his flag. With his hand, the guy grabbed right onto the flag of Kuju's team. After a while, the smoke on the field began to clear. When the guy from Team Hashinami no woke up, he had the flag in his hand. That means the victory goes to Hashinamina's team, and Lala's squad lost in the first round. At the end, Kuju approached Emery and asked if she was okay. The girl said she was fine and apologized for being so useless. Emery explained that she had just lost all vision due to the fog. At that moment, Kuju and Emery were being watched by Kane from the bleachers. When Emery and Kuju left the battlefield, Emery suggested that her partner go talk to Lala and Felis, who were in the stands. Kuju, on the other hand, was now a little scared at the thought of having a string of defeats. At that moment, Emery was called out. It was Kane, who was running towards Emery with all her legs. Concerned, Kane quickly started looking at Emery to make sure she was alright. She asked the girl if she was in pain, was she scared? Noticing that Emery had torn her clothes, Kane even invited her over to her room to mend them. After the inspection, Kane turned her attention to Kuju. Kuju became very tense at that moment. He apologized to Kane, for he did not help Emery win. At that moment, Kane grabbed Kuju by his tie and pulled him towards her. The girl stated that the young man had done a good job as a knight for Emery, after which she thanked Kuju, but Kuju thought that there was nothing wrong with that since they were friends. At that moment, Emery, looking at Kuju and Kane, asked when did they manage to become friends. Kane on the other hand assured that they were not friends at all and Kuju was her rival at all. Kuju at that moment was busy with his tie, which Kane had snatched from him. After which Kane asked Kuju to watch the next round carefully. Kuju did not understand what Kane meant and asked about it. Kane, however, explained that it was her turn to fight. Kane left proudly and beautifully with the hope of showing everyone the splendor of her fight so that everyone would recognize her strength, that she was the best master. Kane assured that she would then condescend to give Kuju the number 2 spot. Kuju at this time was trying to remember what he had said about wanting to be number 1. As Kane galloped away, Kuju noticed Minao standing nearby. When Minao waved at him, Kuju asked Emery to go on without him for now. When Emery left, Kuju approached Minao. They ended up having a dialogue. Minao talked about how sorry she was because Kuju had almost won his first victory. Kuju at this time was interested in other things. He realized that Minao knew about what had happened, so he asked about it. Minao knew about the unusual magical power and ability that is not of your level. Just by drinking it, you immediately become stronger. Kuju, on the other hand, was interested in what it even was. Nil said that recently there have been rumors of an epidemic of something strange where a drug is playing a key role. Its name is Reincarnator. Such a name Minil thought was rather pathetic. Then Kuju asked what would happen if one drinks this Reincarnator. Minao began from afar. Our power is given to us through reincarnation into another world. If we were born again, we would be given our strength all over again, wouldn't we? At this point, Kuju began to realize something. Did the number of unique abilities increase when taking this drug? Minao explained that the 2 opponents Kuju was fighting originally had a unique divination ability. They had nothing like what Kuju could see in battle. According to Felis, people originally possess one predetermined unique ability, and if this ability is manifested through the power of the goddess, what kind of being can acquire this ability again? That was why Kuju asked Minao where the drug was sculpted from. Minao assured that they did not know that yet. But catching the user is quite easy. However, it's as if the brain itself is protecting the memories of it, so there's no point in even questioning the guys with the drug. It's like someone's behind this whole thing. That's why Minao went to Kuju, a low-ranking man, to ask for help. Then Kuju realized that this drug was only given to low-ranked people. In that case, he asked if Minao wanted him to take the bait. Minao was only glad that Kuju was so bright. She asked him to just contact her in case he or someone in his entourage was contacted. But Kuju still had one question for Minao. He thought that everything was possible at this event. Minao, on the other hand, explained that that was why she was curious why the Academy wanted to protect the secrecy of banned substances when it said that anything was possible. Minao surmised that the Academy had secrets that could not be told in the executive committee. Then Kuju understood why Minao approached the carrier. In that case, he asked Minao to believe him if she wanted to build trust. Minao, however, assured that she had said nothing of the sort and had only chosen Kuju because she was his fan. In that case, Kuju decided to help Minao, but he had one condition, for quid pro quo is too cheap. Kuju only wanted to keep this conversation between them and no one else would know about it. Minao did not object and accepted Kuju's condition. Afterwards, Minao said that she did not want Kuju to hate her. That was why the girl promised to tell the guy something about the next match. Minao assured that the academy teachers had nothing to do with it. Kuju didn't understand what the outgoing Minao was talking about and decided to just head to the stands. A couple of minutes later, Kuju was already making his way to his mates to sit next to them. He realized that the match had already started, but for some reason it was counting down. Kuju thought that the match had just been announced. At that moment, the guy saw Marie's frightened face. Kuju didn't realize what had happened until he looked at the battlefield. Team Anastasia, led by the hopeful rookie Kanon Hanabishi, had been annihilated in a matter of seconds. The invincible, the strongest, unrivaled, This is the S-rank team under the direct command of Goddess Rose. This is the power of the Rose Goddess.